The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. I'm so glad to be here today and to have you with me here today. We've got some really exciting things to talk about today, and we're going to be with you for the next 3 hours live talking about topics having to do with autism, how we can be more effective, how we can be more efficient as a member of a team that's trying to help a child on the autism spectrum to reach their fullest potential. That's what we're all about. That's the long and the short of it. We talk about a lot of different things here because this journey is a roller coaster. It's got lots of turns, twists, upside downs, and hurricanes in the middle of it, right? That we have to weather as parents and as practitioners and as teachers, and there's the emotional component of it, there's the financial component of it, there's just the mental game of it, right? Keeping your head in the game, being focused on what you have to do to be able to make things happen for your child. Here's the good news. And I know, we'll get to some of the other stuff, but the good news is that we know that there's stuff that works with our kids, that there are things that we can do to help our children to reach their fullest potential, that we absolutely can see substantive progress with all of our kids on the spectrum. Okay, did you hear that? Because that is the thing that I want you to know more than anything else, right? I know that there was a period of time when people didn't know exactly what. That's not now. We know that there's stuff that work, and if you need further evidence of that, there's all kinds of science that shows that. But if you really need evidence of the fact that there's stuff that works, then you notice that there's 31 states that have insurance reform, right? That could not have come about if there was not effective treatment for autism. So we know that progress can be made. So then it becomes a matter of getting ourselves trained in the tools of how to get the progress, right? Because we all want to be on the team. We're necessary on the team. One person can't do this by themselves, and parents need support, and parents have to dig in and be on the team, right? They got to be a really fighting, rocky kind of member of the team. Otherwise, it's not going to work, right? Because we got to be consistent across the board. So while the child's at school, they're getting consistency. When they come home and they're with the parents, they're getting consistency. Otherwise, we're not going to reach that fullest potential. So we're here about giving you tools and helping you to be able to be an effective member of that team. We also talk about some of the other stuff too that gets in the way of getting to the help, like funding and, the day-to-day working it out schedule. Negotiating the paperwork. Oh my goodness. That can sink a boat faster than anything else, right? So we do talk about those things too. But a lot of what we talk about are the tools and keeping our head in the game and knowing that we can help all of our children on the spectrum. Are they all going to end up in the same place? No, that's just not where we're at right now with the information. People are still working on that, figuring out why some kids make huger leaps and others make smaller leaps. But we know that they all make progress, and that's worthwhile, right? And like I said, research is being done to figure out how can we get more kids to make more progress, but still worthwhile for all of our kids. That's the other really important thing that I want to get across to you, if nothing else, because I know that there are those of you who are out there who have heard well, there are some kids who do really well, and then there are other kids, that we're not doing ABA with them because they're too, fill in the blank. Sometimes people say, oh, well, they don't have enough skills for ABA to be beneficial. No, I'm sorry. There's a right place to start to build the skills so that the child makes progress. If you're saying that ABA is too complicated and the child doesn't have enough skills, then you haven't started in the right place. If you're saying, oh, well, this child doesn't need ABA because they are so high functioning that they're fine and don't need any other help and support and skills, I want to remind you that ABA works on all people, not just kids on the spectrum, that if you want to be better at something, you can use the principles of ABA so that you're better at it. So if you look at your child and you can honestly say, my child is perfect, needs no more progress, the learning can stop here, I don't want them to get better at anything. If you did say that, I haven't met that parent, I don't know that parent, I don't think that parent exists, but then that parent could say, we don't need ABA. But if you have a child on the spectrum, not on the spectrum, and you want to help them to build skills to help them negotiate the rest of their life and be happy and successful and make progress from where they are, then ABA is scientifically proven to be effective. It increases behaviors that you want to see, that you choose to say, I want to build these skills, and decreases behaviors that you no longer want to see. Gotta love that. And we'll talk about that a lot. I mentioned ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis. Okay. So those are a lot of the things that we talk about. And we have guests, and we have experts, and we have people from all walks of life who come in here and tell their story. We're going to have a lot of that going on today. We've got some really, really fun things going on today. Want to remind you that as we talk about ABA, I am not an ABA expert. I am not an autism expert. I am a former teacher, and I am the mom of a lovely 9-year-old boy who was diagnosed with autism when he was 2.5. He had the kind of autism that he regressed into it, and virtually by the time he was 3, by the time he was 2.5, he had there was no functional communication skills. He didn't respond to his own name, and it was a devastating time. I'm not going to candy coat it. It was a really hard time in the history of the Penrod Miller family. And I can laugh about it now because we are not on that page anymore. And we are some of the luckiest people on the face of the earth because we lived in a state where there was funding through the state for ABA therapy, and we lived close enough to the Center for Autism and Related Disorders that they were our provider. And believe me when I tell you, I know how lucky I am. And there have been many sleepless nights where I paced the floor and thought about you, yes, you, and the fact that you didn't get to be as lucky as I did, that you didn't draw that card, that you didn't live where I lived and have access to what I had access to. That has kept me awake. And that is why I'm here, because 2 years ago, I had the opportunity for the first time to meet Dr. Doreen Granpiche. She is the founder of the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. My child had been getting therapy here for more than 3 years, and I had not met the woman who founded it. But I did meet her, and she was doing a presentation for a small group of people, which I still to this day do not know how I got invited to this, but it was a life-changing day. And she showed us in the room for the first time anywhere in the world to see outside of CARD, to see this plan of CARD e-learning that is an online tool to train parents, teachers, practitioners to be able to have the principles of ABA in their own time. And she unveiled Skills, this amazing program where they took the entire curriculum, which, a part of which my son had the benefit of, although there was a much bigger curriculum, some of which he didn't need, because not everybody needs everything, right? But the lessons that we had been having in our home, the thing that I had been wishing for you, she had put it all together online with a group of amazing people, brilliant minds, to make it available for everyone. And when I say that I went home that day, I didn't even really make it out of the building before I was just shaking. I was so excited. And I got in my car and drove out of here and got 3 buildings down, pulled in the parking lot because I couldn't drive. I was so excited. And I called my husband and I said, I need to come home, but I don't know how long it's going to take me to get home because I'm so excited. I don't know what to do with myself. I'm shaking. Life is different now. Life is different now. There's different things going on, different plan, because I see the plan of how the field is going to be at least leveled to some degree. Is there still more work that needs to be done? Yes. But I want you to know that the reason why I'm here is to help you to get access to the things that you need in an effort to level the playing field, so that you understand the tools that we were given, that we help you along the way to find if you can get funding to have the kind of program that I had in my household. And if you can't at this moment in time, although I believe it's coming for everybody, I don't think that everybody has it right now. I believe that's coming. But because I think that insurance reform is going to be nationwide in the United States, and then we move on to the rest of the world, right? One square inch at a time. I believe it's coming, but I know that you're sitting there with a child right now that needs help right now. So that's why I'm here, to connect you to experts, to help to get the answers to the questions that you need, so that you are not in this alone ever, not for a minute, not for a second. So ask away. Ask away. I will hunt down answers for you. I will get people into the studio to talk to you about the kinds of things that you need to be talked about and with, and for you to be able to give suggestions, because there's parents out there who don't have your experience, and that's all of you, no matter which day you're on. If you have been doing this for 35 years, and bless your heart, because you're a pioneer if you have, or if you just today said, you know what, I don't know, but I think something's up with my child, and I got this fear in my heart that it might be autism. And you've gone online and Google searched autism information and you showed up here. I just want you to know, if it's autism, there's hope and there's help, and we're gonna be here with you. We're here live 3 hours a day, and we have a library of videos, but we want to hear from you. We want to know what you need. We want to know what kinds of experts you want access to, because that's my job, to find those people for you so that we can get down to the business of helping our kids reach their fullest potential. So how can you get a hold of me? Well, we got a lot of different ways here. If you're watching us right now on autism-live.com, on our website, you will see that there is a little box that says, Shannon is answering right now. When it says that, that means that box is active. You can type away in there. This is totally free. You don't have to input any information. You're not logging on. Just type away, hit enter. It magically shows up here on my screen. Even if you just want to write in and say, Shannon, I think you're full of it. That's okay. That's okay. Heaven knows. That's probably true to a large extent, but I want you to know I care. That's why I'm here. But in any case, write in, tell us what you need, tell us what you like, tell us what you wish you were seeing more of, who you wish you could talk to, what questions you'd like asked, okay? If you're watching us on autism-live.com and it says rebroadcast, then that box is not going to be active. And in that case, there are tons of other ways to get a hold of us. You're going to see some of them on the screen. The email address is right there. You can email us any time of day or night and let us know what we can do to help and support you. And there are a whole bunch of people that work here that want to help and support you. They know what you're doing. They know that it's difficult, and they want to be able to help you. Tell us what you need. Okay, so email is not the only way. Of course, you can phone us. Isn't that? I know you go on most websites and you want to talk to a real person, and it's not happening, right? But you can with us. Right now, the phone lines are open. We are live from 9 a.m. to noon Pacific Standard Time. If you want to call in during the live show, you can. Our technical director, Emily Goodwin, will patch you in directly, and you and I can be having a conversation right now in real time. So now, if you call and it's not during the live show, there are people standing by to take your call. And if you call after business hours, depending on Pacific time, right? So depending on where you are in the world, if you call after hours, you can leave us a message and we will get back to you as soon as we're back in the studio. By the way, you can also Skype with us, whether you want to call us and be patched into the show. We had a wonderful Skype interview yesterday with Carrie Magro. Oh, wasn't he delightful? A young gentleman diagnosed with PDD NOS at the age of 4 and is now a motivational speaker and a writer and a radio show co-host. And oh my gosh, what isn't this young man? He hosts his own Carrie's Corner and a video blog called My Autism, My Voice. What an inspiration he is. And we were Skyping with him. Would you like to Skype with us? You can. Whether you have camera capability on your computer or you just want to do audio only, we'd love to talk to you. We know that you're a wealth of information, so feel free to Skype in with us. Also, we're on Facebook, and we have a new Facebook page, Autism Live. We appreciate your likes and support and shares and all of those things. Check out our Facebook page because we got a lot of information there. We put up some interviews there. We put the question of the day there. We love it when you guys interact with each other during the question of the day. Great way, and you can also leave us a message on Facebook, and some of you who have done that, really appreciate it, and we do get back to you as quick as we can. You can also tweet with us, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, I'm new to tweet, so I am not the expert tweeter, but I'm getting better at it. And the more you interact with us, the better I hope I get at it. So be patient with me, but tweet away and we will tweet back. So lots of different ways to get a hold of us. But I mentioned that there are other ways to watch us as well. If you're watching us on autism-live.com right now, that's wonderful. And we love it when you come and visit us here. And the show, as I said, is live from 9 to noon. And then the rest of the hours of the day, we rerun old episodes. So no matter what time of day or night, you can find us. You can go onto the website and something will be playing, which, is a wonderful thing. But many of you have asked for, well, I want a specific episode and I want a specific part of a specific episode because I saw it and now I want to show it to the person who babysits my child so that we can have a conversation about it. Or I want to, email this particular section to my child's teacher. Or I want to go back over it again because I thought it was really good information about toilet training, but I didn't get it all the first time. Well, we have lots of different ways in which you can do that. One of them is blip.tv. You can go to Blip. We have our own little channel there. You can search topics. You can search dates. You can pause, rewind, fast forward, take a look at all of the things that are on our blip.tv channel. You can also, there it is on the screen for you. You can also check us out. We have our own channel on YouTube, and this is great if you want to email somebody something. We have little snippets of interviews that you can send the link to them and say, check this out. This is what I saw on Autism Live, and share the information, or just watch that little snippet of the interview that you wanted to see, whether it was Holly Robinson Peete or Joey Travolta or Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, or when Dr. Dorian Granpeesheh was on the show, or one of the things that I know you guys have been talking about, we had Dr. Adele Nadowski in here a week ago talking about Behavior Champ, this new aspect of skills, the skills program where you can design a behavior intervention plan, and it walks you through all the different aspects of it so that it's pretty much impossible to make a mistake, but it allows you to customize within this frame. Great tool for teachers. Oh my gosh, I think it's going to revolutionize the way in which we look at behavior intervention plans. And as a parent, to know that I can go into a IEP and talk about a behavior and pull out the Behavior Champ and really be a member of the team that's effective and efficient makes me really excited. Okay, so we are also a free download on iTunes. You gotta love that. All these places is totally free. Don't have to register, don't have to do things. Love that. And we're available on Ustream. We appreciate, on any of those places, you can leave comments, questions, suggestions, whatever flips your switch. So take part in the conversation. If you've got something to add, add. And don't judge what, I'm brilliant at saying, oh, I don't want to ask that question because what if it's a stupid question, right? I'm always afraid of that. But I'm reminded that, look, really, in all sincerity, there is no stupid question. And that sometimes what has been awesome for me on this journey is to go on different sites and see the questions that parents ask, because then I know what questions to ask. Sometimes in the beginning, I didn't even know, like I didn't know about ABA. On the day that my son was diagnosed, somebody had said ABA to me, and I did say, what about that AB? I think I said, what about that ABC thing? I don't think I even knew it was ABA. You know what I mean? And so I didn't even know what question to ask. And that's a part of this. So ask your question. Not only is it not stupid, your question, it's probably going to help someone else. So feel free, ask the question. I promise it won't be bad. Okay. We like to start every morning with something that I really love, the jargon of the day. This is the time of day when we take on these words, phrases, and anagrams, alphabet land. If you have a school-age child, you know what I'm talking about, right? But we've got to make friends with the jargon. We just have to. I know I resisted for a really long time, but I got to tell you that once you start to understand what the jargon is, you become a more efficient, more effective member of the team. You can be at meetings, understand what's being said about your child, and I also think the reason why we have jargon, right? The whole purpose of jargon is to be able to communicate in a really fast and efficient way about a very, very specific thing. And when you start to understand the jargon, it expands your knowledge of what we're dealing with. You start to understand autism more, and you start to understand how effective the proper treatment can be in creating progress for an individual child in very specific ways. Okay, so that's my sort of spiel about that. We got to make friends with it, and why not do it the same way that we do when we're teaching our kids? Take it into small increments, not hand you a whole tome and say, memorize this and figure it out, right? I don't know about you, but when I was starting to take on the jargon, flip through pages, go on Google, search things, went to the library, got psychology books, and I would look up the word. I didn't understand the definition. The definition was full of jargon. So I would, write all those words down on my little pad, and I would look up those words and go, okay, I don't understand the definition to this word. It was like going down the rabbit hole. So what we do here, and I'm real committed to this, is that we take that word, phrase, or anagram, we give you the actual definition, we make a little fun of it, and then we give you a working definition that I know it gives the professional people hives how we it's not as perfect, right? But we have to start somewhere. Okay, and then over time, you'll see, and you guys have written it and said this, that over time, the actual definition starts to make sense. I know, it's scary. It's like going into the Twilight Zone, crossing over into the dark side. In any case, our word for today is tact. Now, we're not talking about when you very carefully mention to somebody that their lipstick is on askew without being rude, right? We're not talking about that kind of tact. This is something that's entirely different. So let's take a look at what it's funny because, the first time that they were talking about with my son and saying, well, we're teaching him how to tact. And I went, you're teaching him about tact? He's trying to learn how to speak again. You're teaching him about, and they're like, no, we're teaching him to tact. And I said, is that like a fishing thing? What is that? And then they explained it to me, and I didn't understand it. This is one of the toughies. But let's see, and we have a video that we'll show you later on too that hopefully sheds some light on what this is. But let's see how well I do at this. All right, here's our actual definition. A tact is a verbal operant, there we go again, right? More jargon, evoked by nonverbal discriminative stimulus and followed by generalized conditioned reinforcement. That's what I'm talking about. What in the hey, nanny does that mean? Okay, and after a while, this will start to make more sense to you, although it's not the best definition in terms of being a parent, right? So let's look at what our working definition is. Spontaneously labeling or commenting about things the child comes into contact with for the purpose of communication. All right, now this is a really watered down version of it, but let's see if we can make this clear. We talked yesterday about manding. When you mand, you request request, command, or demand something. So, and we said yesterday, when we're building language with our children, we want them to mand hundreds of times a day. We really want to get to the point where they're manding hundreds of times an hour, which sounds crazy, but it's not. So the child's requesting stuff, and not just vocally, but they're gesturing, they're pointing, they're making noises about it, they're pointing to something, labeling it. They want what they want, and we're encouraging that. We're reinforcing the dickens out of that, right? Okay. Well, when we are working on language, there is a part where we're just going to work on labeling, where we're going to teach child and say, this is a pen. And we're going to teach it receptively, and we're going to teach it expressively. So we're going to say to the child, give me the pen. And the child in the beginning doesn't know that this is a pen, but we have them give them, and after time, they associate this with pen. We use as few words as possible. Yes, it's a pen. We're reinforcing it, saying, good job, so that the child starts to realize receptively, this is a pen. It takes a while, right? We're patient, and we give them lots of opportunity. And then we're going to work on this expressively, where we say to them, what is it? And we're going to help the child to get the approximation of pen, or we're going to have them point to text, or we're going to have them point on a tablet if they don't have vocal speech. But we need to get them to say, what is it? And for them to point, gesture, sign something, it's a pen, right? That's labeling. And labeling is useful, labeling is great, but there is a leap from labeling. There's a moment in time when a child will just spontaneously see something in the environment, and in some way, for the purpose of communication, it's almost as if they take whatever communication they have, whether it's pointing, vocal, or something, and they try to contact the thing in order to somehow have conversation, the beginning of conversation with you. The example I always like to use is that when I was pregnant, I remember saying to my husband, we were coming down a hill into a shopping plaza that was having an outdoor furniture sale in the parking lot, you know what I mean? And there were all these balloons, and we just came over the hill and we saw all these colorful balloons, and the baby kicked right at that moment. And I turned to my husband, I said, in like a year from now, because we were really close to our due date, I said, like a year from now, or maybe a year and a half from now, we're going to be coming over this hill, and they're going to have their annual sale, and a little voice in the back seat is going to say, balloon. Right? And we had this, cuddle moment. But what I was describing was a tact, that there was something in the environment, and the child noticed it and called attention to it. And even though the child in that moment wasn't saying, Mommy, look, a balloon, by saying balloon, it was a share. You know what I'm saying? So that the child is saying to the people in the car, it's a balloon, but they're just saying balloon. They're contacting the environment, contacting the people around them, creating this moment of conversation. It's beginning conversation, but it's a really important building block. Now, how do you teach that? Ooh, it's hard because it needs to be spontaneous. For it to be a pure tact, it needs to be something that just comes about. Really hard to do, but we can work on it. And I said a pure tact because if the child has done it completely on their own spontaneously, that's when it's a pure tact. But we can begin to teach it through something they call an impure tact, where we call attention to something and give them opportunity and prompt them. But we want children to start to engage. There's a social component to it. There's a language component to it, where they see things around them and they share it with us. It's a verbal moment. Again, it doesn't have to be vocal, but it's a little bit more than labeling, right? They're calling it into attention for themselves to appreciate it and somebody else. So if I'm saying it's a pen, I'm not really, calling it out to you. I'm just labeling it. Tacting, I want you to notice too that it's a pen. Okay, that's a really watered down version of it, but I think hopefully you'll begin to understand it. If you don't, wait, we have a video coming up that will show you that has animation. Should make it easier. But know that tacting is part of building language. and that it's really important that your child have the opportunity and be in the beginning stages and eventually being at the point where they can tact on their own. Okay, we always have a question of the day for you. And the question of the day is meant to get you thinking, participating. We really enjoy it when you answer the question on Facebook, but of course you can email us. Of course you can call us. Of course some of you tweet it. You know, it's really whatever is best for you. But here's our question for today. And I really loved yesterday's question because our question yesterday was, what does your child do that you brag about? Isn't that a wonderful thing? And we try to do a nice mix of questions here about things that, so you can get things off your chest, that you can dream a little bit, that you can brag a little bit, because, you know, we need to have the conversations. So today's question is, if you could require, you could make it happen, one person to be more educated about autism, who would it be and why? You know, and I ask myself this question all the time, like, who is the person that we have to get to understand this, that then there could be this amazing, I don't know, trickle down. There could be this watershed moment where somebody really, because let's face it, there's a whole lot of people who don't get it, right? I think it's hard for us to get it. I remember when my son was finally diagnosed and I was trying to explain it to friends and family, and they would always say, well, what exactly is autism? And I finally said to my husband, we got to work on our elevator pitch. You know what I mean? We got to come up with our 2-minute, here's what autism is, and feel really comfortable about it. I don't know that I still can say that in a concise 2-minute thing, here's what autism is, and feel like I really covered it. Do you know? Yesterday was really interesting. My son had a dentist appointment, and can I admit that as far as I am, you know, I am not a good person as far as going to the dentist. I have issues with that, and I know I need to go for myself. And my son has gone to the dentist before, but he has not gone in a while, and that is very bad parenting. And I said I gotta suck it up. And we did have difficulties. I mean, there were insurance difficulties. There were certainly financial difficulties for a while, and then there was difficulties with our actual dentist, that they couldn't get us in for a year. I mean, seriously. And so finally I got to the point where I said, this is not acceptable anymore, right? I'm coming up against obstacles here, but one of the obstacles is me, which means it's time to do things differently. And I said, we need to go to a new dentist because enough is enough. It's time to go to a new dentist. And so I took my son to the new dentist yesterday, and I was just like, and she had never met him or I before. And my son does not remember the last time that he was at the dentist. He's never had to have a filling, never had anything drilled on, so he had only had cleanings, and he just doesn't remember it and doesn't understand the whole culture, and that's my fault. I needed to be giving him more opportunities, taking him on a regular basis, right? And so I had all this trepidation, and of course our kids can pick up on that. Took him into the dentist, and it's that moment, right, where I have to disclose or not disclose. What do I do? What do I not do? And I always try to put it through the filter of, you know, is there a reason to disclose? Is there a reason not to disclose? And weigh, you know, what's at stake? And a lot of times anymore, I just don't disclose. I always disclosed in the beginning, and I kind of got my tail feathers burned with that and made things harder for my son, and I never want to do that. But there I was yesterday, and I said, I really feel like I got to disclose. It's a medical situation. There's going to be stuff in his mouth. I need for her to be patient with him. I need for her to show him everything before she does it. So I disclosed it on the medical, because, you know, they're asking for medical history and all these things. I'm going to tell, you know. And I put it everywhere on the medical disclosure. And my son does get methyl B12 shots on a regular basis that I administer to him. And I had to put down medication, and I put that down. And she said, oh, I see that, you know, your son is taking B12 shots? And I said, yeah. And she said, you know, what is that for? And I said, I don't know if you noticed on the rest of the document, the 32 other times that I mentioned that my son has an autism diagnosis. And so we had a discussion about all of that. And, you know, she's talking to me, and she's looking at him over in the chair, and he was of course, looking at her computer screen and figuring out all these things on her computer screen and checking out, all the equipment and everything. And he was a little on the fascinated side. And so she had all these questions, which I thought were great. I love it when people ask questions. She wanted to know how he presented, when it was, did he regress into autism? I loved all of her questions, and I thought, oh, it must have some bearing on the teeth issue. I think it was just curiosity by the time we ended up. And then at one point, and I'd said to her, he lost all of his language, wasn't responding to his name, blah, 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 blah. But I said, he's about to be in 4th grade next week, neurotypical, completely included. He's doing great, very high functioning, high IQ. He won't have a problem with what you're doing, but I do need you to, show him before you do anything. Don't stick anything in his mouth without showing it to him and telling him what you're going to do, which I think you should do for every child, right? And probably she felt condescended to but I've learned you got to say stuff. Anyway, so she did the whole exam. They did the x-ray thing. And the hardest thing of the whole day was when they were trying to get him to bite down on the first side on the x-ray thing, he just wasn't getting it. He bit down and thought he was just supposed to bite down and let go. And so the girl kept on saying, no, you gotta bite down and you gotta hold, and he just wasn't quite getting it. And then once she did explain it to him, he had it and did it on the other side and everything was fine. But they were kind of talking to him in a way that it was like, looking to see what does he understand and what does he not understand. And at one point she did say to me, he does respond to his name now. And I said, oh yeah, no. He totally speaks, understands everything you say. He understands what we're saying right now, And anyway, she did the whole exam, and bless her heart, I think she just was, not sure and not quite getting it. And, we were done, and he didn't need to have anything done except the cleaning. And she said, wow. And she's whispering to me behind his back. And I said, he's okay? Like, we don't have to do anything? There's no fillings? And she's like, no. Wow. And she said, he's doing really well. And I said, oh, yeah. I thought I made that clear, that he's great. He's great. And she goes, no, I don't think I would have known. And I said, oh, yeah, no, I totally know what you mean. And I really wasn't going to tell you, except that since it's his first time here and he's never met you before and he hasn't been to the dentist in a long time, and, I knew that he was going to have a certain amount of anxiety about it. I just really felt like you would benefit from the knowledge. And it was just so interesting to me. And she was like, I just can't even believe. I mean, I wouldn't know. And I just thought, wow, we have so much work to do. We have so much work to do. We have so many people to tell. And I came home and I said to my husband, I sort of wish she'd seen the show yesterday to see Carrie. Carrie was awesome. I can't say enough. I think we have to get more faces of more people out there for people to see all the different faces of autism. The kids who are nonverbal but are able to communicate. Well, actually, and I just messed up. The kids who are non-vocal but are still verbal. That's a face of autism. That their voice be heard. I know Carly Fleischman, is trying to have that voice be heard for the kids who are high functioning and don't have as much, and everything in between, so that people get comfortable with seeing all the faces of autism. It's not easy. But in any case, who do I wish really understood autism? If it was just one person, I would have to say whoever wins the presidential election. That's who I'd like to know. Because I don't know that will solve everything, but I wish that person had a really good grasp on what exactly autism is, what it looks like, what it takes for a family to go through it, how much hope there is, and how much our kids deserve to have that opportunity, that playing field be leveled. So there we go. There's my answer to today's question, but I'd love to hear from you guys. Who do you want to have understand this in a better way? Is it your child's teacher? Is it the superintendent of your child's school? Is it, your mother-in-law? Who do you wish you could say, no, I'm sorry. A couple of weeks ago, if you'd asked me, I would have said 50 Cent. If you'd asked me a week and a half ago, I would have said Joe Scarborough. But I wanted to have a bigger effect even than that, although I think that both those things could have a huge effect too. But if only one person, I don't know. Probably whoever's going to win the presidency. Okay, we always have a topic of the day. Our topic today and all this week, and I'm really excited about this. This came about because you guys asked for it in lots of different ways, but teaching functional communications. Teaching a child, or actually anyone, to be able to communicate in a way that is functional and does not require challenging behavior. Everyone can learn to communicate functionally. Everyone. And we need to focus on that a lot of times as the first best course of action. That, we may look at a whole bunch of different behaviors and a whole bunch of different things that we want to do, but if we don't have functional communication, we're going to continue to have problems, right? The kids are going to tantrum. Because if you can't get your needs met any other way, then that's what you're going to do. Right? I mean, we can understand that intellectually. Emotionally, it's a whole other kettle of fish, right? But it's the truth. And it's not surprising. It's not shocking. All children go through a phase. I say this over and over again. Baby born, baby cries, some action is taken to make it better. That is their only method of communication when they come out. The expectation that by the time they're 2 years old and 2 months, that they're going to have figured it out, that they no longer need to cry or flail to get their needs met, we might need to adjust our expectations there, right? It only happens, they only stop crying and flailing their arms and legs and throwing themselves on the floor when they have a better method of communicating their needs to you. And sometimes kids pick that up on their own, although most kids go through a bumpy transition period. It's called the terrible twos. But for our kids, they need help. They need help to figure it out. We know how to give them that help now. We know how to give every child, whether they have dual diagnosis, no matter what's going on, functional communication skills. So we need to focus on that. And to that end, we got a lot of different stuff this morning. We're going to be talking about, I've gone on so long, we have to have time for this. We're going to talk about overcoming obstacles this morning. Then at the top of the hour, in just a few minutes, we're going to have Evelyn Gould come in and talk about teaching functional communication skills. And then at 11 o'clock, we are going to have Nancy Allspaw-Jackson come in. During the 11 o'clock hour, we do Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We've got some really interesting news stories to tell you about. And we're going to have a special guest, Dani Bowman. You've heard us talk about her before on the show. She's an animator who is a children's book author as well, and she is on the spectrum, and she is somebody who has been involved in inclusion films. She is somebody who's been involved in the organization that we had on last week, The Art of Autism, and she is an amazing and talented young woman who is going to be in the studio with Nancy and I talking about the kind of work that she does. And that's going to be a really exciting thing. So let's talk autism with Shannon and Nancy. Nancy Allspaw-Jackson will be here, but don't forget, in just a few minutes, we're going to be joined by Evelyn Gould, and we are going to take on teaching functional communication skills. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to talk a little bit about overcoming obstacles, so stick with us. Hi, I'm here today with Cecilia Knight, who is the Director of Training for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And she's going to talk to us about something that I'm not entirely clear on, tacting.
Tacting is when you make a comment on the environment, and then another person may reinforce that with non-specific reinforcement.
Can you explain to me what the difference between a tacting program is and an expressive labeling program?
In an expressive labeling program, typically the therapist holds up a card, maybe with a turkey on it, and the therapist would say, "What is this?" referencing the picture. And the child would respond, "Turkey." The child is labeling the item. With a tact, it's a comment on the environment. So it can be evoked by a smell. So if I walk into the house and I smell Thanksgiving dinner, I can say, turkey. Or if I hear gobble, 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 I can say, that's a turkey. So it's a comment on the environment, which is different than just naming the item.
do you get a child to comment on the environment? That's got to be hard.
It is. We use different prompts. Most of the time we use vocal prompts. For example, we may look through a book and point to the picture of an item and say, oh, look, it's Nemo. Say, Nemo, and then reinforce the child for responding. Or we may say, what do you see? Say, Nemo. And then eventually we would want to fade our point away. So I may say, look, Nemo. And then the child is referencing that and then also saying, that's right, I see Nemo. And then later fading completely away so the picture of Nemo itself evokes the comment. If we're working on something auditory, maybe we have a cow on the table and we play the environmental sound in front of them, maybe give them a vocal prompt to say, it's a cow, and the child may say, it's a cow. And then we might fade the visual of the cow and they just hear the sound. And we prompt them by saying, say, it's a cow, or I hear a cow, and then eventually fade until the sound itself evokes the comment. The goal is to get towards spontaneous tacting, where the child can walk around and comment on the novel things in the environment that he hears or sees. And so that's a great way to sort of bridge to that point. Tacting is really important to get to higher level lessons of interverbal behavior. Commenting on things that are private events, or commenting on things that I can't see that you're feeling, like your stomach hurts. But it's important to have those tacts in place so you can get to those later programs.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We're talking about overcoming obstacles. And, you know, as we go along on this journey, and I know you guys can attest to this, right? This is a bumpy road. It's not a direct path. As we're making our journey through autism, we are going to come up against very real obstacles. You know, how many years have we been on this journey? And I still like to float on the river in Egypt, the denial, and think that everybody has the same goal and everybody has the same intention and that it's all going to be okay. And I guess that's on my worst day, that's what I think. On my best day, I recognize that stuff is going to come up, that there are going to be obstacles, and that I just need to keep my head in the right place, notice and recognize obstacles and go, why, look, it's an obstacle. That does not mean that I stop. That means I got to find the way over it, through it, under it, around it, or something, and I got to get creative at figuring out what you do about it. And sometimes it's hard. It's really, really hard, and the obstacles come in the most bizarre form. And the one thing that I will say that really helped my husband and I on this journey is that first of all, I was with the right guy. Can I just say, and I don't say this enough, that I married the right guy because my husband is a good guy. And I hope that you guys all have, and I know it's not true because this is me being in denial again, but I hope that in your life, let's say that you find a partner to be in the trenches with who is worthy of being there with you. And that is a gift and not a hindrance to you, because it makes all the difference in the world. And honestly, my husband has one of the best senses of humor of anybody that I've ever met. He's a very funny guy. And we have kept our sense of humor about almost everything. And he comes home, frequently he works late, and he comes home and talks me off of ledges and gets me laughing and says things that are just absolutely hysterically. And even last night he had me rolling on the floor off the couch because he makes me laugh. So I think it's important to keep a sense of humor, to identify. My husband has a phrase, and I can't use it here on the show, but I'll euphemize it. He says, oh, we're in a poop storm, right? And there are times when poop storms came, there are times when poop storms still come, and And the first thing that we do is acknowledge it and go, oh, look, it's a poop storm. And you know, a poop storm can be a mild poop storm. It can just be that you are expected to be in too many places at one time so that you humanly can't do it, right? Or that everybody all at once, like everything just falls apart all at once. Whatever it is, but acknowledge it first of all. And then see if there isn't something funny about it. Because my husband's way of looking at things is, well, if we're going to laugh about this in 2 years, is there a way that we could laugh about it now? Like, do we have to postpone being able to say, okay, this is quite hilarious, really? And I do think that having a perspective on it and saying, okay, you know, one of the things that I like to think about is, what's happening right now, is this something that's going to be worthy of discussion 5 days from now? Is it going to be worthy of discussion 5 months from now? Is this going to be something that we're still talking about 5 years from now? And have that perspective on it. Because sometimes the stuff that happens, I mean, I'm just thinking quite literally this year, I don't remember all the things that were happening the week that taxes were due. I literally can't remember, but I remember feeling like it was this huge weight crushing down on me that there were 85 different things. Can't remember them now. Can't remember them at all. But the one thing that I do remember is that we put our taxes in and we got back this notice that we couldn't e-file because someone else had claimed our son by his social security number on their taxes. And, you know, on top of everything else that week, that was the thing that brought me and down to my knees and made me cry. And I said, really? Really? In amongst everything else that we have had to do, everything else that we've had to overcome, and then some person is trying to cheat the tax system and stole our child's identity and stole his income tax number, really? And now we have to do 21 extra steps to prove that he's actually our child. Really? Why don't they come and show up and pay the bills? Why don't they come and learn the therapy? Why don't they come and talk? Really? You know, and it was the thing. And my husband said, you know, really, I don't think this is miserable. We have to do 20 extra steps and we really don't have the time this week. But in the context of things, is this something that, you know, 5 years from now, we're going to talk about? Maybe, just as an example of sometimes stupid stuff happens. Stupid stuff happens, but when it's piled on everything else, it feels like a poop storm. But keeping perspective and really going into crisis mode. And I had the opportunity to talk to somebody recently, a friend of mine who recently had their child diagnosed. And you know, and I was saying, look, this is crisis mode. And in the beginning, lower your expectations of what it is you're going to get done. You know, it's like if the house were on fire, right? You're going to prioritize differently than if things are not on fire. Like if the fire is in the kitchen, you know, you're going to put your time and energy, you're going to assess the situation and say, what do we need to do right now to survive? And that's not going to be sit down and file the complaint that somebody stole your child's social security number for your taxes. It's going to take a whole other level of importance. In the moment, it can feel like that's a really important thing, but you know, if your house is on fire, the kitchen's on fire, the whole house isn't on fire, whatever it is, because I know it's different things for different people, you go into crisis survival mode. What do we need to do? Sometimes you have time to assess the situation and step back and go, wait a second, you know, let's try some baking soda on this. Let's get the fire extinguisher, or let's call the fire department. Other times, there is no time. You don't even have to assess the situation. You see crisis mode, we need to evacuate the building and make sure that everyone is okay. So I'm asking you that the first thing when you are having to overcome obstacles is identify that it's an obstacle and give yourself credit for the fact that you're going through something real. Then kind of put it through the filter of, you know, let's get some perspective on this. How truly important is this? Is this something that has far-reaching effects in our life, or is this something that is just a pain in the pooter? and that we gotta get through somehow. And, is this a crisis? Is this an emergency? And what do we do in crisis mode? What do we do in emergency mode? Is it a huge crisis? Is it a long-term crisis? Is it a short-term crisis? And get into survival mode. You can't stay in survival mode long, right? And I know for a lot of you, if you're just getting your child diagnosed and you're feeling like, okay, wait a second, I think this is at least the kitchen on fire, right? I want to urge you, if that's the case, you do need to kind of go into survival mode, but with a long-term plan of not having to stay there forever. When you have a new baby and you bring a new baby home, right? It is, in a sense, crisis mode, right? It takes precedence over everything else. You've got the new baby, you bring the baby home. The baby is going to have constant needs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's no, taking a vacation from it. You marshal the team. Sometimes it's just you, and other times you have family support. But either way, you have that thing. You come home and you go, this is a life, man. This is serious. I gotta make sure that we do this right? And it's a stressful 6 weeks period. And usually the doctor sends you home and goes, just get through the first 6 weeks. Don't try to do a whole lot of other stuff in the first 6 weeks. Don't, honestly, you gotta go to ground zero and say, we're just getting through the first 6 weeks. And then when you move into the 6th week, then you start figuring out, okay, how do we change our life to accommodate a baby? And you rearrange things, right? Well, in some respects, it is the same thing with autism, right? It's a new thing. You have to make room for new things. And in the beginning, at least the first 6 weeks, I usually say the first 6 months with autism, you have to cut yourself some slack and say, we are overcoming some of the biggest obstacles of our life. We're not going to deal with some of this other stuff. But evaluate it and also ask yourself, what do I have the ability to do today? For some of you who are a little further along down the road and you're not in crisis mode anymore, ask yourself, what do I have the ability to do today? What's within my power? Sometimes, I know I felt this way last week. I was so overwhelmed with so many different things that I needed to do. Take a little bit at a time. That's what I'm saying to myself. I'm asking myself, how can I be kind to myself today? That's taking it a little bit at a time. It may not be fast enough for everybody else. Cut yourself some slack. It's going to be okay. A little bit at a time. Evaluate the problems. What's the most urgent here? What's the most urgent and that you can make some headway on? That you have the potential? Is there a phone call that you can make? Is there something that you can do? Can you ask a question to get things furthered? But don't try to take the whole thing on in one day. That's when we just get overwhelmed, right? Been there, done that, still doing it. Right there with you. But that's the other thing, to know that you're not alone. And it may feel like you are alone, but I'm telling you, that's what it feels like. You're not. There's a whole bunch of people pulling for you. I'm pulling for you. I know you can do this. If we survived it, good heavens, you can. I'm confident of that. Okay. It is the time of day when we show you the A Word. This is the wonderful documentary that's being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And it features a family who has gotten through that initial crisis mode, survival mode, although they just had a new baby. So they're a little bit back in there, exactly what I was talking about with the baby. But actually, at this point in the video, I think they're starting to settle down into that as well. Their son, Jack Riley, was diagnosed with autism when he was 2 years old. He's now 3. He's been getting ABA for about 8 months at this point. And this week, in this week's episode, they have taken on toileting for the first time. It's an exciting time. It's a lot of interesting things going on. Make sure you have the washing machine revved up. But it is a time that they're going to look back at, I know, and go, wow, that was amazing and life-changing. Really, truly life-changing once our kids get this skill, which, by the way, our experts have come in and said countless times, they can teach this to any child. If you feel like your child is never going to get potty training, check out some of our videos that we have on our YouTube channel where the experts talk about how they get it done. They say they have not failed with a kid. So we don't give up, right? But take a look at what's happening with Jack Riley. When we come back, we'll be with Evelyn Gould talking about functional communication. Stick with us.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack. Jack Riley. He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast.
This is day 3 of potty training. Well, we think he's learning to pee on the potty. No big successes yet, and lots of accidents. Here is the laundry from today.
Ready?
25 weeks ago, Jack Riley had a huge breakdown when Jessica asked him to sit down, a direction that's usually very easy for him to do. At the time, no one knew he had to go potty. He didn't have the language to tell his parents or Jessica that he needed time.
Jack, what are you doing?
Pooping.
You're pooping? Oh, okay.
Jump to 4 weeks ago, and you can see he is now able to communicate what he needs when a demand is placed on him, instead of tantruming like he did before when he didn't have language.
Pooping your diapers.
Okay.
How do you know when a kid's ready for potty training?
So, a couple of prerequisites to know when a kiddo is ready is they wake up dry in their pull-up or diaper. And when they actually do go in their pull-up or diaper, like during the day when they're awake, they let you know that they went number 1 or number 2, depending on what it is.
It's like you have no choice but to pee.
Let's do it.
Help.
No, I can't help you pee. I can hold your hand, but I can't help you pee.
So the purpose of the potty log is just to see how long it takes them as soon as they sit on the potty for them to actually urinate, and the amount of time that he's able to hold his urine. And with the log, we're able to visually see how long it takes them each time and if they have accidents or not. He's on a half-hour potty schedule, so if he doesn't go when we take him, then we have to take him in 10 more minutes. So every 10-minute intervals until he does go, and then we reset the clock, and it's 30 minutes again.
Okay, buddy. Okay, last chance to go pee-pees. Do we reset it for 10?
Oh, what does that mean? What does that mean, Jack? It's potty time! We can come play after. Hurry!
Uh-oh, he wet himself.
Oh. We can reset to half an hour now.
To make sure Jack Riley uses the potty regularly, they have been giving him lots of fluids and salty foods.
There it is. Let's go. All right, let's go. What do you have to do? You have to put your pee-pee in the
Potty.
Okay, give it a shot. See if you can put it in there. There you go. You're doing it. Yay, Jack.
Big place for your pee-pee.
Big pee-pee. Yay! Woo! Yay! Good job. What a big boy. High five, high five, high five, high five, high five, high five, high five.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and one of my favorite times of the week, we have Evelyn Gould with us here in the studio. Evelyn is a BCBA, a board-certified behavior analyst, and a wealth of information. And more than that, because I love the information that you bring in, Evelyn, but I love the energy that you bring to everything that you do. Because Evelyn, if you don't watch the show, Evelyn gives us permission to have our feelings. Evelyn is that force in our lives that says, you know what, stuff is going on and let's make room for it and move through it. And you change the way I'm doing things, Evelyn, and I love that. and I find myself quoting you all the time and going, okay, that's going on, I gotta make room for it. I'm gonna stop denying and avoiding and just make room for it.
Right, I'm doing a lot of that myself this morning.
Well, and we all need to. We all need to, and it's very human. And you are as empathic as anybody I have ever met, and I think that makes you particularly particularly effective working with our kids, and but also working with the adults who are not on the spectrum, you know, and you always remind me about, you know, these are tools that not only can we use and have for our kids, but they're tools that we need for ourselves. And I just really appreciate that and want to say, you know, how I see you constantly being in the place where you are advocating for parents as much and more, I think, than actual parents sometimes do. So. Which is a wonderful, because sometimes, you know, quite honestly, we're too overwhelmed. We don't even know, I said earlier, we don't even know what to ask for.
Well, I think that we all are not necessarily our strongest advocates. You know, I probably don't do the best job at advocating for myself a lot of time, and tend to think about other people's opinions and what other people want and what other people are doing, or just other stuff, or just feeling overwhelmed. Like, I can't, I don't even have the energy to respond to this thing that's being presented to me right now, or I'm so overwhelmed or angry or stressed, I can't even think of what to say. Or I think we all have that.
Thank you, because there it is again, you know, saying, okay, it's okay that we are not our best advocates. She gives us permission to be ourselves and have our feelings. And I asked you specifically this week, because we had so many comments in the last couple of weeks and people writing in and saying, you know, there was a comment that somebody had written in 2 weeks ago saying, how do I get my girls to talk, was the comment on the live site. And it was one of those questions which it's that, you know, because you see somebody write that and you know, there's so much you want to say and so much hope you want to give people and so much emotion in those just a few short words, but it's not something that can be answered in just this, you know, well, you know, here. But one of the things that you mentioned when we were talking about it was you said it's so important to be teaching functional communication skills, that's got to be the priority in a lot of cases. I mean, you know, we want in functional, in all, I was just going to say, is it just some case? We all want functional communication skills for our children, and we said this
and
is just
ourselves. I know a lot of some colleagues I can think of that I've worked with who could have done with some training in using their communication functionally.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, is there anyone among us that couldn't strengthen skills and fill in other things? And you know, I want to learn how to communicate better. And in a very real way, I want to be able to communicate better with my child, but quite honestly, I want to be able to communicate better with all kinds of individuals. I have a friend, a really good friend, who I love and respect and adore and admire, and we know now that when she asks me for directions, it's going to be a really difficult situation because I'm a visual person, she's a concept person, and I started giving her directions to something the other day, and she said, okay, I need you to stop, because I was saying, oh, you know, it's right by that blue building, and I went, I'm doing it. I have to stop. I'm so sorry. And I tried to think about how can I say it in as few words as possible. What streets do I know the street name that I can send her down? Because I know that we don't. And we're the best of friends, but we don't communicate well in terms of directions.
I think that's the key, because when you were talking about functional communication, what we're meaning is not just. You know, someone can have, like your friend, can have a bunch of words, a bunch of vocabulary, but they're not able to understand what you're saying.
Right.
Or you might have a bunch of vocabulary and you're trying to communicate a message and it's not going across effectively.
Right.
And so neither of you are getting your needs met.
Exactly.
So the point about functional communication is it's less about teaching content or teaching the words or teaching specific, like whether that's visual or written or whatever it is, and more about how do you get your message across to get your needs met in an appropriate way that works in the context of where you are.
And I need this lesson today. I'm just being honest here. I need this lesson today because, you know, we all have different things that we encounter, and, you know, I know that there are some things, a couple of things that I got to do later on today where I need to up my game in terms of communication because I feel like, you know, I'm not getting it done. So, but this isn't about teaching me functional communication skills, but I'm going to try and learn while you're teaching us about teaching
our kids.
Yes, so, teaching our kids. Yeah.
So
our
by
kids on the
functional, we mean that it functions for the person to get their needs met in an appropriate way for the setting that they're in.
Right.
So kids can be communicating with us all the time, but in very inappropriate ways that don't get their needs met, or maybe do, but just in very inappropriate ways. So like someone who is screaming and having a tantrum is communicating with you, but in a very inappropriate way, and they may or may not get their needs met. And sometimes they can be, those inappropriate ways can be very effective at getting what you want. So you can, we have the classic example of the kid in the grocery store having a meltdown because they want a lollipop at the checkout, and then mum's feeling so overwhelmed by the embarrassment or what she is thinking that other people are thinking about her kid, and also just like, I can't be dealing with this right now, I need to get out to the car and do these billion other things that I have to do, and everyone's looking at me and blah blah blah, that she just gives in and gives the kid a lollipop to shut them up. Right,
and we've all been there and caved in. And
so in a way that communication was effective, and that the kid was like, I want a lollipop, and it got them the lollipop, but it wasn't functional in the sense that it was very, very inappropriate, and in the long term isn't doing them any good, and isn't doing their parent any good, but definitely not beneficial really for the child.
Right, long term.
So long term, functionally, that's not okay.
Right, but so we gain an understanding of what functional communication is, and then when we put it through the filter of autism, because I feel like there's a little bit of a stigma maybe that parents feel like, well, I want my child to be vocal. I want vocal speech. I want my child to talk. And when experts start talking to them about functional communications, I feel, I hear and feel from parents, and I was there at one point, it feels like a small death. Like, but while that feeling is real, it isn't accurate for what's being said to them.
No, it's not. So the reason that we talk about teaching functional communication first above all and everything else is that really we need to be getting their needs met, and realizing that communicating in appropriate ways to get their needs met is the best thing that they could do. And teach them different ways of using communication to get their needs met, and once you do that, then you can start thinking about more of the way that the child's communicating or the content of what they're saying. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But like I said before, we could teach, and we do have some children who come to us who have like a bunch of language, and they do speak, or maybe they don't. That's the point. They have but we know they have all these words, and they know all these words, but they're not using them, so they're still not talking. And the point being they're not using them, and that's the functional part of the functional communication. Like we want to concentrate on helping those kids to use their language rather than just adding more language to it. Because if they're not using it, what's the point? They're not, that the whole point of having words is to use it to communicate. So we're trying to focus, as behaviour analysts, focus on how kids use their language, and by language that might start off being a visual picture rather than, it doesn't have to just be words. And sometimes what we see is kids just find it easier to initially learn how to communicate using pictures before they start to speak, and then later on the speech may come. But it's about finding the way that works for the particular child. And so some children pick up PECs, for example, the picture exchange, very well. Other kids, we start with object exchange. It's exchanging an object to indicate you want something, and it could be like exchanging an object that's related to what you want, or like giving a cup to indicate that you want a drink or something rather than a picture. For other kids, it can be using sign. In the UK, we have British Sign Language. So you have American Sign Language here. I'm not sure exactly what the differences are, but we have British Sign Language. But actually, we also have Makaton. I don't know if you know about Makaton, but Makaton we used a lot with some of our kids because it's like a simplified sign language. It kind of doesn't have the complex grammar and stuff that sign language does. So for some kids, that worked better for them. So there's like a lot of different modes of communication that you can use, but what we find is if we teach kids the function, like how to use communication, like how to make requests, these different types of ways you can use your language, if we teach kids those different ways of using language, that later on the speech will come. But if we just try to teach them words without use, like without the function being there, that they're going to have a really, really hard time of acquiring or starting to talk, starting to communicate.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of, a metaphor that goes with it. And I don't know, it's not a great one, but I'm thinking of, it would be like giving somebody a guitar and teaching them the positions in which to play the notes, but not teaching them how to play music.
And also not teaching them how wonderful it is and the good things that can happen when you do play music, and the joy that you bring other people, and not being reinforcing to you, because it has to be reinforcing.
Yes.
As we talk all the time, people won't do something if it's not going to be reinforced.
Right, you got to get a paycheck.
Right.
You won't do it again.
Right, exactly. So just giving kids a bunch of words is not necessarily going to be reinforcing for them.
Right.
It's teaching them how to use those words, because then they're getting their needs met, and that's why kids will continue to use their words then, or use their communication, because they start to realize, oh, if I do this, then I'm going to get this thing that I want.
Yeah.
And then at the same time, we're shaping up people being reinforcing for kids, or teaching them that, oh, people can be reinforcing to you because they can give you things that you like.
Right.
And so we're working on a lot of pairing with reinforcement, and pairing praise with rewards, so that kids start to like praise and so on. And that paired with teaching the functions of different ways to use your language will hopefully start the kid kind of communicating, and then we can start thinking about teaching words and so on.
Now here's the conundrum for me always, that as a parent, that all kids need to learn functional communication at some point, because they do not come out of the womb with it. So all kids need to learn it. But it seems like in our society that for a typically developing child, the functional communication skills, we take for granted how they learn it.
We do.
But it's it seems like it just happens, and nobody acknowledges how it happens. I don't think that the typical parent really stops to think about how that came about, and that it didn't come about overnight, that it was a series of steps, a series of reactions, but the child was automatically reinforced by things and continued to get better at it, but it happened over a period of time.
Right.
And then our kids don't do it.
Yeah.
And then we have an expectation that there should be some way, either we're despondent and going they can't learn it, or that they should be able to learn it, and they should learn it, and there should be a shortcut, and they shouldn't have to go through all those steps that a typical kid went through.
And that's not the case.
Right.
So for whatever reason, we know that our kids with autism just don't apparently seem to learn in the same way that typically developing kids learn, and we're not really sure exactly why that is.
Right.
But they're not responding to their environment in the same way that typical kids do. But what we do know is that typical kids do go through stages of development in terms of their language, and there does seem to be a pattern. So first of all, kids start babbling and making sounds, and then parents imitate those sounds, and then kids start paying attention, and then you're kind of shaping the babbling, and then kids make requests. The first type of communication that kids make is to make a request and get something back from their caregiver. So
which we said yesterday, our word yesterday was manned.
Right, so mans are what come first. And so there does seem to be a pattern of development in terms of language, but for typical kids it's like it sort of seems to slide along without any effort.
Right.
And we know that there is some effort in parents. There's a lot of people like studying interactions between parents and children to see kind of what are parents doing. They're kind of shaping the child's language.
Right.
And so if you have a child with autism, for whatever reason, they just don't seem to respond to these types of interactions or the environment in the same way. Or perhaps it's just that kids with autism need many more pairings, or they have like a bunch of other stuff going on, so they're not attending to the right cues, for example. So there's a whole bunch of reasons why that might be.
And it could be different for every kid.
Exactly,
too.
and it can be different for every kid. And all kids with autism have their own learning styles and their own pattern or path of learning, and some will progress very quickly through certain things, others will struggle with certain things but be really great at other things. Every child's different, but we do tend to try and look at the development of a typical child, and then we'll start teaching the imitation, so that kind of idea of the child imitating what you're saying, and then start working on manding and so on. Like we try to follow that path of development with our kids with autism.
But you power pack it so it's specific.
Exactly.
And rewarded.
Right, and we power pack it by being very what's the word? Very deliberate about what we're doing with the child and reinforcing, rather than with typical kids, they don't seem to need that control. They just kind of learn it.
Right. They can have a whole lot of things going on and they can find it reinforcing. And what we're doing with the kids with autism, correct me if I'm going down the wrong path here, is that we really try to isolate it and make it abundantly clear and abundantly reinforcing so they can't miss it.
And the other thing is that we make sure we're teaching each function of language. So rather than, like I said, teaching a child the word milk, just the word, here's the word milk, milk, we want to teach them how to use that word in various different settings very deliberately. So we don't make assumptions that if we teach the child to say milk when they see a glass of milk, so I hold up the milk and your kid says milk, and then I'm like, oh great, now they know milk, they're going to use it no matter what. If they need milk, they'll use it. If I ask them what is it, they'll say milk. If they see a picture, they're going to say milk. I don't make that assumption that they're suddenly going to use that word in all different ways, because the likelihood is they're probably not initially. So what we have to do is teach them, hold up the milk, they say milk, but we also need to teach them to use it as a request. So when they want it, they're going to say milk. When I say what comes from a cow, they're able to say milk. When they see a picture and they say milk, when they see a milk van, they say milk. Like, I'm going to deliberately teach them all these different ways that they can use those words. And again, like, it doesn't have to be speech, it can be picture exchange, it can be object exchange, it could be sign, it's whatever mode of communication the child is going to pick up fastest initially. And often it's not words. Okay, a very important point. We should take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about, so if it's different for every child, you know, how, when a team of therapists that's being driven by a BCBA, how they decide where to start. Let's talk a little bit about that. So stick with us, and we'll be right back with more with Evelyn Gould. Currently, in the United States, 1 in 88 children is affected by autism. 1 in 88 means something different when your child is the one. Recovery is possible. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, host of Autism Live, an online show about autism broadcast by CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm also the mother of a child with autism, my beautiful son, Jem. You know our old joke, guess what?
Chicken butt.
Chicken butt. So we're gonna take the chickens. But things weren't always so easy. I remember when Jem was first diagnosed with autism. I used to lay awake at night in bed and pray for someone or something that could help us to get our child back. My prayers were answered by Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD treats autism and other related disorders using the principles of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, which is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It is also recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. Surgeon General. About a year after we started treatment with CARD, we were able to see tremendous improvement, and we got our child back.
What grade are you in?
Second.
You are a smart cookie, huh? Do you like school?
Yeah.
Do you have any good friends?
Yeah, Oscar.
Oscar is your best friend?
Yeah.
And my child is just one of thousands to benefit from CARD ABA therapy. Across the nation and around the world, children are making amazing progress and being given the keys to unlock their full potential.
We are extremely grateful for the amazing job CARD has done in helping our daughter. Our daughter today, just in 4 months, I think is a totally different child than when she started with CARD. I kind of see it as, it seems like her brain in a way was asleep, and now that we've gotten so many services, we've seen her wake up.
Did you have some glasses?
Recovery is possible if you take the right steps, if you're willing to put in all the hard work. And 7.5 years, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's worth every little bit, and CARD's been there with us every step of the way.
I have 2 children with autism. I can't imagine a day without CARD or the therapists. They've been so instrumental in helping us with our kids and shaping their lives and helping us help them.
Thank you, Christina Big Alex.
Thank you, Jackie and Mariana.
We've tried other things before ABA, but the most beneficial thing has been ABA services, and I'd be the first person to tell any newly diagnosed family that you have to contact an ABA provider. And if you're lucky enough to have a card, you're very blessed.
Recovery from autism is absolutely a possibility. We've been recovering children for over 20 years. It's just a matter of identifying the child's medical needs, understanding the child's sensory issues, and then teaching the child all of the skills they need in order to function normally.
We know there's hope for autism. Autism is treatable and recovery from autism is possible.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm here with Evelyn Gould, and we're talking about functional communication. I sort of wish that they had been able to be with us during the break, because we always talk about interesting things, and you expand my head. And but I was saying to Evelyn during the break that I really want to talk about how there's a really important step along the way that we have to take a moment and assess where the child is, right?
Yeah, before you start.
Yeah, and that, you know, if you're, I know a lot of you are working in a lot of different ways at home, you know, that you're putting together an ABA program, or you're trying to put together an ABA program, and you're using different methods of doing that. You may have a fully funded ABA program with a BCBA who is helping to make the design choices. You may be using the CARDI Learning and the Skills program on your own. You may be doing that with consultation. You may be doing a workshop program where you're having, I mean, there's so many different ways, and I'm grateful that we have all those ways now. I think that that's a wonderful thing. But it doesn't change that when we want to have a child have functional communication skills, all of our kids are different. They're in different places. They have different skill levels, and their skill levels are not necessarily linear.
Right. So yeah, you really need to do an assessment to know where to start. And I think the first thing that I would assess actually would be what the behaviour problems are, what's really significantly impacting the child and their family right now. And if it's something like, oh, the child's having meltdowns all the time, looking at that and working out why the child's having the meltdown and where the communication breakdown is. What is this child saying when they're having a meltdown? What is it they're trying to get? And then that would become my focus for, right, we need to give this child a functional way to communicate that need and get it met other than tantruming.
Before you took on other stuff,
right,
you would say, because it's kind of like killing two birds with one stone here.
Right.
We're gonna, because in reality, if the child is expending the energy to have a tantrum, you know that there's something they really want.
Yeah, so think about it this way, that we're going to take all that energy and be like, right, this child really cares about whatever it is they're trying to get.
Something.
They really care about that. So let's get that energy and that motivation for whatever it is and channel it into them learning something positive, a way of communicating in an appropriate way and getting their need met. And so the drive obviously is there because the kid is really, really wanting whatever it is, or to get out of doing whatever they want. So
and for the caregiver, it's a win-win.
Right. So for the caregiver, you're going to get something out of it too, and you're very motivated to fix that problem. And also just knowing that if you don't fix those problems, that could really interfere with your kid's ability to learn other skills and work well with other therapists or whoever's coming into your home. And it's that, so that kind of crisis stuff is what we're going to assess first.
Love it.
And target that first. And what we've seen in the literature actually is if you teach functional communication skills, that can really have an impact on challenging behaviours at home, and those come down, and sometimes, you know, repetitive stereotypical behaviours even change, and it's kind of like an indirect way of reducing overall challenging behaviour.
Yeah.
So you end up seeing a pattern of not just will you get rid of those tantrums, but perhaps you have a kind of spread of effect across other behaviours and in your home.
Yeah, and it makes sense. If we remove ourselves from the emotional situation where you say, my child's tantruming, my child's making me crazy, I'm just at my wit's end, and remove ourselves from it and say, you know, if there's a reason why. There's a reason why that they're engaging in this behavior, because they think it's going to work. They think it's going to work.
You don't do anything unless it's worked for you.
Right.
Like, we just don't do stuff out of the blue or for no reason. It's always for a reason. And so our kids are telling us something. Like, the kid is trying to tell you something. It may seem like they're just telling you, I'm being a brat, but they are also communicating something with you, and it's obviously got them what they want at some point in the past, and that's why they're doing it.
And it's not a judgment, right? It's not a judgment of, oh, you did bad parenting and you gave in at some point, because you had to at some point. When the child came out and the child cried, you patted them, you fed them, you changed the diaper, you made them warm, you rocked them, you know, that was your level of communication. Now you're asking for it to change.
Right.
But that the child has to make the transition.
Yes, and in order to change the child's behavior, you have to change what you're doing.
Yes. Oh, it's that thing that we never want to acknowledge.
Because the child isn't operating in a vacuum. It's an interaction. It's like a little dance that you're doing with your kids. So you got to change the steps, otherwise the kid's just going to keep doing the same thing. So we're going to come in and we're going to figure out what the kid's communicating, and it's not just tantrums. Like, you could have a child who is shouting out in the classroom or something, and then you figure out, you do a functional assessment, and you figure out, why is this child doing it? Oh, they don't know how to get the teacher's attention, so they're just causing a commotion. And then the kids are laughing, so they're getting attention from their peers as well. And so we then would say, okay, how can we're going to teach this kid to put their hand up or whatever, and then reinforce that. So it can be any kind of disruptive behavior that's really important.
Right.
Not just tantrums.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily have to be aimed at other people. It can be aimed at themselves too. You know, the child who sits there and takes their own clothes off.
Right, exactly.
You know, and there's a reason why. And again, we go back to the same thing that we say all the time. We can't guess.
Right.
Why? Because a child could be taking off their clothes because they're hot. A child could be taking off their clothes because they want attention.
Or because they are uncomfortable with the sensation.
Right.
Or maybe they have an allergy to something. Who knows?
Right.
It could be anything.
Could be a lot of things.
So we really need to understand exactly what the child's trying to tell us, and then we can teach them functional communication to tell us that in an appropriate way.
Okay. So I like this idea of starting with what you're already having a problem with. Because everybody's going to have the most buy-in, it's going to make the most sense, and you can make a real difference.
And what we're really doing is teaching the child the value of language and saying, look, this is why this is great for you, because you can communicate really, actually a lot less effort to communicate with a picture saying, I want juice, than to throw yourself on the ground and have a big tantrum. It's a lot easier. Go on, do it, and the kid will see that and be like, oh, okay. You know, that's what we're aiming for, that they realize the value of the language, because then when we start working on it more, it's going to be easier.
A key point to what you just said, though, is that they need to get the reinforcement for it. That's not when they
deliberately.
You know, because so much happens in life, and you're busy and you're cooking dinner and whatever. But the moment in which the child does the functional communication and appropriately requests the thing they want, everything else has to be secondary.
Initially, it really, really is important that we acknowledge every appropriate communication and reinforce that, because you're basically competing against a history of inappropriate communication working. So think about the example of the child in the classroom. If we teach the child how to put up their hand instead of like shouting out and saying a silly joke or something, if the teacher doesn't acknowledge that the child's put their hand up, it's not going to be very effective, because the kids, because you're competing against what worked all the time, the kid's just going to be like, oh no, I'm going to shout out. It works way better.
And later on, we can work on having it be intermittent, so that it doesn't have every time.
We're not going exactly. And I have this come up a lot with parents where we're teaching the child to request, and we always start, like I said, with the most motivating things possible. So if a kid's favorite thing is a yogurt, and I had a wee guy who actually was really obsessed with yogurt, so it was the favorite thing in the world. So we started with yogurt and exchanging a picture to get a yogurt, and so the parents were delighted when he started doing this. Instead of like, what he used to do was he would stand behind one of the parents and shove them towards the kitchen, which wasn't that disruptive, but kind of annoying.
Yeah, disconcerting.
And then if he was shoving them towards the kitchen, if they said anything to him, then he would like stamp his foot. And if that didn't work, then he would have like a scream kind of thing. So we were replacing that behaviour with this exchange of the picture, and he got it really, really fast, and they were absolutely delighted. But then, and so they're like giving him yogurts. I'm like, this is brilliant. And then the mom came to me and was like, he's eating like 6 or 7 yogurts a day. I don't know. We can't, like, I don't know what to do. Like, we can't keep doing this.
Right.
Like, are you telling me like I have to give him all these yogurts all day long for forever?
Bless her heart.
I know, but that's a very common worry from parents, that we are, say, especially if you're working with a kid, he loved yogurts and fruit, so that's great. But other kids, we might have to start with something like a cookie,
right,
or something, or a small piece of chocolate or something, and that's really unhealthy.
Right.
We don't want to be giving copious amounts of those things forever.
Yeah.
So I think it's a valid worry. But what we reassure parents is that just initially, we have to respond to every request to reinforce that behaviour and make it really strong.
Right.
And to compete against the history of the other stuff working. And once we have that behaviour really well established, that requesting behaviour, then what we're going to do is we're going to move to the gambling model of reinforcement, where we want to get this child kind of addicted to responding. And so we move from, the slot machine, like the Coke machine, where every time you put your dollar in, a Coke comes out, to the slot machine in the casino, where sometimes when you put money in, you get a massive reward, sometimes you don't. But you keep putting the money in because you might get it.
Right.
So you keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it, because every now and again it gets reinforced. So that's what we're aiming for. Okay. We're going to start off with a Coke machine, and then we're going to move the kid to the slot machine in the casino to try and get them most addicted to using those skills.
But I also want to ask, too, when you're giving the reward, if it's something like a cookie, or as you mentioned, chocolate, or they were saying the yogurt, that was what was reinforcing the child. You don't necessarily have to give the whole yogurt when they ask. You can give a spoonful of yogurt.
Right, and that's another key thing, is that we don't need to give a child the entire cookie. In fact, you can create multiple opportunities. Like, it's all about creating as many opportunities as possible as well throughout your day for your kid to use this new skill. So yeah, you can break a cookie into, like, I don't know how many pieces, but a lot of pieces.
Crumbs, practically.
A lot of pieces. And then the kid's encouraged to eat more, and they're not going to get satiated or full up and not want any more. They're going to keep wanting more and keep asking, so you're keeping the motivation up. And you can do that with, like, crisps or potato chips as well, or anything that or the yogurt, like we would give him like a little spoon, and actually then we moved to the little petit filou or whatever, the little, I don't know if you have those.
I don't think we have those.
they're fromage frais, they're like little tiny yogurts. And kids really love them, and they're only about that big, they're about an inch high.
Oh, interesting.
And we got the mum to move him to those instead of, like, giving him these massive pots of yogurt as well. So then he could maybe have 2 of those, or 2 or 3 of those instead. You're
so being really mindful of it and thinking about
how can I get my kid to want more.
Yeah,
basically.
When we watch The A Word, we see that Jack Riley, the little boy, he's very motivated by pancakes, and that there is a plate, and they have little pieces. We don't often get to see it, but they have little pieces of pancake. He's not getting the whole pancake every time. Little pieces of pancake that get popped into his mouth, and we should also say it isn't necessarily always food. Sometimes it's a toy.
Absolutely. And so if your kid's asking, the most motivating thing is some toy, then you can give them access to it for a little while, and then swap it with something else. I mean, it really depends on the child, and you have to work closely with someone who knows what they're doing, I think, especially if it's something like a toy and it's very motivating, because if you try and take that away, you could be faced with a whole host of other things, other behavior problems, and knowing how to then prompt and deal with that as well.
Yeah, I think one of the reasons why people like food early on is that it disappears.
Right.
It's consumable,
Exactly.
it goes away.
I was going to say, it is much better if it's something that has a definite end.
Beginning, middle, and end.
So it's actually something that can work quite well is YouTube clips, because YouTube clips are, maybe pick ones that are like 30 seconds long, or at the most, or whatever, and then the kid asks again, and you click on it again.
Right.
But again, you need to have control over it.
Yeah.
That's also key. Like, it's better to pick something that you have control over, so the child has to come to you or has to come through you to request to get it, because if they can get it by other means, then they probably aren't going to bother asking you.
Yeah. One of the things, because my son wasn't incredibly reinforced by food. There were some small exceptions, but you know, he was very reinforced. He'd just gotten into cartoons when we started therapy, and we had a portable DVD player, and we had those, we got them at a dollar store, the DVDs that had the old black and white cartoons that for whatever reason, that's what he preferred instead of color. And they would be about 45 seconds long. And it was child protected, so he couldn't touch the buttons. There were other things like that were very short, that toys that, like a wind-up toy, I know you've talked about this before, that he would find there was a little worm that would inch its way along, and it would go for 10 seconds and then have to be wound up again, and he didn't have the finger skills to do it. But you know, he would get so excited and jump up and down and say again, and make the little motion.
Or like our balloons, like when you blow up the balloon and then you let go of it and it whizzes around. Or those little helicopter things that you blow up and then they whiz around. Those are great too. And oh, my mind's just gone blank. I was thinking of something else there. I don't know, but I've done something similar like that with a kid who really didn't have any, didn't use any speech and didn't have any functional communication, and he loved, similar thing, loved certain programs, and the parents got a DVD player like that with a remote. And actually what we were trying to do initially was just getting the child to look at the parent, like to realize, oh, I need to engage with my parent to get something. And so we were just teaching him to make eye contact initially, so we would stop the video and then prompt him to look at the parent, to be like, make it go. And then, you know, we obviously then developed that from just the eye contact to I think sign. We used maybe sign with him. So yeah, you can use anything like that as long as you have control over it. And the kid has to go through you to get it to go again, or to get it, have another turn or whatever. Yeah, and absolutely those toys that have a beginning and an end, like we talk about the marble run here, that you put the marble at the top and it runs its course and it's done, and then you get the marble back and they have to earn the marble back again. That those kinds of things are much easier, especially in the beginning, than you don't
saying,
have to take them away.
Here's Buzz Lightyear, play with it for a second, and now I'm going to take Buzz Lightyear away. You can get to that fairly quickly, but it's not efficient in the beginning.
Exactly.
Very exciting. Okay.
And then of course it's really important to prompt these new behaviors, because you don't want to be frustrating your child. You really don't want to. Really don't want to pair using appropriate communication with frustration and annoyance. Because we want this to be easy. We want to be saying to the kid, look at this great easy way that you can get your needs met, rather than having a big tantrum. We don't want to be you know, having a child making some kind of effort and then just waiting and being like, no, try again. That's not exactly what I wanted. That's not exactly what I wanted. You really, really do not want to do that with communication.
So we're rewarding approximations.
Right, we want to reward approximation, but we want to prompt the behavior initially. So for example, if I have a child and I'm trying to use a picture exchange, I'm not going to expect them to know what to do initially. I'm going to be probably physically prompting them and being, you know, holding up the item and then prompting the child to hand over the picture, and immediately they hand me the picture, handing them whatever it is they've asked for. It's going to be that deliberate. It's got to be really, really immediate. It's like, you see the thing you want, you give me the picture, here you go, you get it.
And literally physically moving them through it the first time, not assuming, you know, we talk all the time about giving them the right answer.
Exactly, you're going to be giving them the right answer, and then you're also intercepting them before any behavior starts, because you really don't want to also pair the functional communication with inappropriate behavior. So you don't want to be having the child, waiting for the child to get frustrated and annoyed before you prompt them, because then they may just feel like, I have to get frustrated and annoyed before anything happens.
Yeah, I think when people watch therapists working with children, I know I was this way before for a long time I was this way. I wanted to say before, and then I was like, oh, a long time. But you see a child sitting there in the chair, and the therapist is working with them, and the child is sitting there all wonderfully nice and not engaging in all kinds of behavior. And then I would sit and try to do something with my child, and he'd be under the chair, he'd be around the chair, he'd be behind the chair, he'd be sticking stuff up his nose, and I would think, I can't even get my child to sit in the chair. But that in and of itself is a whole series of lessons to get that buy-in. And therapists, there's something poetic about watching a good therapist, because they are hyper-aware, hyper-vigilant, they know what kinds of things, they can tell when the child's about to lose interest, they're always like Johnny on it, immediate, I say this, you do this, reward, I say this, you do this, reward, and it's that quick. And if they see the child, before the child has got time to go under the chair, they're immediately introducing something else and, prompting and keeping the child. It takes time.
It does, and it's not going to probably feel natural at all, because it's going kind of against everything that you have been doing or expect to doing, because it is that deliberate.
Yeah.
But that's where we have to start.
Yeah. So, but just realize, though, kind of what you're talking about, that whole thing of, don't give them time to engage in other behaviors, that there is a fluency in terms of the deliverer of the therapy that you need to get to.
You really just don't want to wait and see what happens. It's like, as soon as you know your child, so say we're dealing with this tantrum behavior and it's related to the child wanting something to eat, we're not going to wait till we wait for the child to get really hungry and irritated and be like, or not pay attention, and then he's suddenly having a tantrum, and then we're like, oh no, okay, now let's try and teach him how to request appropriately when he's in the middle of a tantrum. We really want to be watching him, and before he has a chance to get to his trigger, that we're prompting him to communicate prior to that, if that makes sense.
It does.
We want to jump in there and beat him to it.
Yes. All of that makes sense, but in the day-to-day life, you're going to make mistakes.
Right.
You are going to make mistakes. I know that. Evelyn knows that. You're going to accept that you're going to make mistakes. When you do make a mistake, what do you think is the best thing to do? Let that moment go and seek the next available moment?
I think it depends what mistake you're making.
That's true.
Yeah, it's going to. What I would say to do probably depends on what it is that's happened.
I guess that's very true. But
just remember, ultimately, you're going to have times where you do the wrong thing. Like as a BCBA and a therapist, there's times whenever I am like, oh, I don't think I chose the right thing to do there. But you just have to look at it and realize what you did, and then you just move on, and you're like, next time, just don't dwell on it.
Right.
Don't stress out about it.
We get out the wet noodles, we give ourselves 30 lashes, and then we're all in our head, and we miss 5 more moments that we would have had an opportunity to do something in a different way.
Right, and it's when you're in that moment, you are having to make a decision, and you don't necessarily know what's going to happen, and you just have to make a decision about what to do, and then you just do it. So it's just about realizing that you did the wrong thing, or
not the highest,
not the best thing that you could have done, or maybe you don't even know what it is that you should have done. But just leave it alone and try really hard to be like, okay, I'm going to create. So with the communication, so say you feel like you messed up a communication and the kid had a tantrum and it just all went wrong. So what you want to do is come out of that and be like, okay, I didn't handle that very well. So what I'm going to do is try and now create, once the kid's calm over the behavior, I'm now going to create some positive interactions with my child where he can communicate with me appropriately, and I'm going to practice those. So just try and create, go and contrive some situations or something where you can practice the positive skills, and then you will feel better, and your kid will have the opportunity to practice the right way to do things, and you have the chance to practice the right way to do things, I think.
Okay. I kind of want to go back to, if somebody, I keep thinking about the person who wrote in and said, how do I get my girls to talk? For somebody who is at that point, and they've not done an ABA at this point, but is maybe thinking about doing ABA, and they want to get to functional communications.
Yeah, we kind of...
That's what we were
going to talk about assessment and so on. We kind of got sidetracked.
But with a really important discussion. So expectation, though, what we would say to them is, in the ideal situation, you would contact an ABA provider.
You'll have someone who's working with you who understands language development and functional communication, not just teaching words, but how kids communicate and how they use their language.
Right.
And the different ways that we use language to communicate. And then you're going to have that person's going to come and they're going to basically figure out where along the line of development your child is, and that helps us understand, us as behaviour analysts, figure out where we need to start teaching.
Right.
So your kid, like I said, we have some kids coming in and they have like a massive vocabulary, but they have no clue how to ask for something they want. And you know, we think, oh, they have all these words, why are they not using them?
Right.
But that could be where that kid's at. So that kid's functioning maybe over here, and they have like, well, they have all this vocabulary which is kind of up here, but then they're like way down here in terms of how they're using their language functionally.
Right. And that is unique unto them.
And that's unique unto them. You might have another child who comes in and they are really good at requesting, and really good at like labeling things, but not so good at some other things.
Right.
Or they maybe have 5 words that they use, or 2 words that they use to communicate everything.
Right.
You know, so they're here and they're here. So every kid's in a different position.
Right.
And they have different skills, and in terms of their communication.
And where you start depends on where the child is.
Right, exactly.
And it depends on where the team is,
right,
and how much time you have, and what needs to have happen. Because, and so I just want to drive home that it's different in every single circumstance, which is why when we saw that question, it was that, where, you know, where do we begin?
Because really, we can't answer it because we don't know where the child that we're talking about is. We don't know where those 2 kids, I think it was 2 kids, was it?
She said, how do I get my girls?
So it was 2 kids, so we don't know where those 2 kids are in terms of that pattern of development, so we don't know where we would need to step in and start reinforcing and prompting and doing all that. And we don't know what mode either, because we don't know whether we would use pictures or sign or go straight into speech. Like, we just don't know, because we don't know where the kid is functioning.
Absolutely. And really important, you know, one of the things that we've been talking about during the break was that, you know, I remember having a conversation with Dr. Doreen Grandpichet where she talked about how a long time ago at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, they had this big, I don't know whether she said to me it was yellow, I always pictured it in my head as yellow, but I pictured this, from what she said to me, this big piece of yellow paper that went, it was so big it went around a room.
Yeah, I believe that.
And that it listed all of the individual skills that a child, and they just added on to it over time. That, you know, what skills does a child need to acquire? And it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. It was just a massive, massive piece of paper. And she said, you know, but part of the problem is knowing all those lessons, like what does this individual child need? Like where on this page do you start?
Exactly.
And which lessons are necessary for this individual child? And I just remember it was like my heart almost came out of my chest, because I thought, this is exactly what I have been feeling, the overwhelm. I am an ex-teacher, but this is the overwhelm that I have felt as a parent of, you know, I don't know where to start.
Right.
And what I love is that all of that information was consolidated and put in a place where parents and teachers and practitioners can use it easily. And of course, I'm talking about skills. You guys know that I love skills, and that I use it at home. But there are many, many aspects to skills that are just brilliant. But it cannot be understated that the assessment portion of the skills program is absolutely mind-bogglingly amazing. That it takes all of those different things and gives a parent an opportunity to step in and answer questions that are easily followed, and have, not only is there a question, but there's also an explanation for every single question. So if you don't understand the question, you get a concrete example that you can really answer and go, oh, yes or no. And there are some instances, I should clarify that there are some instances where you go, I don't know if my child can do that, and there's room for that as well. But that then it takes that whole, the system takes it and figures out and says, okay, here are lessons that are appropriate for this child.
Here's all the things that your child needs to learn, and it's all the things that your child needs to learn to get up, if they were to be caught up to their chronological age. But even that in itself can be overwhelming, because the child, everything is broken down to every single little tiny thing that a typical child learns. And I was saying to Shannon in the break that sometimes people come in and they say, oh, they see like maybe talking expressive language. We need to work on expressive language, and they don't break that down into, well, how do we get the kid to get there?
Right.
Or look at all these steps that a typically developing child goes through, and look at all these skills that make up being able to do this. So if you just start right in here, your kid's going to really struggle and possibly fail. And then, but what we don't want to do is to say, well, the kid can't learn this.
Right, because
so
that's not the truth.
It's not the truth at all. So that's what's brilliant about behavior analysis, and I love it for this. But it allows you to have tools that can help you break down everything back. So you just need to go back a step and find where the hole is.
Right.
Find the prerequisite that your kid doesn't have.
Right.
And then we start teaching there and working up to this skill.
Yeah, I was saying to her during the break, it's like knitting the sweater, right? And my mother loves to knit on circular needles, right? And it just goes around and around, and the tube gets long. But if you've missed a thread way back at the beginning, it's a hole. And if you miss a bunch of threads, you start to have a holey sweater. And you have to go back. You have to go back and take care of those holes. You don't necessarily need to throw away the whole sweater, right? But you got to go back and take care of those holes. And that's sometimes our kids are Swiss cheese.
Yeah, they are.
We got to fill the holes.
Usually there are holes there, and we have to make sure we fill those in. I mean, sometimes we do our best, and sometimes we will get to a point along the developmental track, which is never like this anyway. It's always like all over the place. But we get to point B, and then we realize, oh, we're getting stuck here. What's happening? And usually, if you get stuck somewhere, it's because we missed a hole somewhere, and then it's just a case of going back and figuring out where that hole is, and then going back to B and then moving on.
Right.
So, like I said, it's not like this kind of linear process. It does tend to jump around all over the place.
And it is for sure not one size fits all.
Nope.
It is not a, A, B, C, and arrive at D, all kids. It just isn't
like
that
in
way.
skills, we try to break things down into what the core fundamental skills are. So within the language and communication, we have these core fundamental things that kids need to be able to do to be able to function in everyday life. But we may find that some kids we might be able to go in and just work on those fundamentals, just work on every single one along the way, and they get it. Other kids, we have to give them stepping stones to get towards those skills. So we have to introduce some extra steps towards the end goal. Other kids might need one step, but then they're able to jump forward a few. Some kids maybe need 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 steps, then they get it. It's really is individual to the child. And what skills does is it breaks down. We have these fundamental core skills, and then it tells you what steps you might want to try. So sometimes you might want to just go in and teach the fundamental skill and skills, but then it doesn't work. So then you can go back and pick some of these stepping stone type things.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it also encourages you. It kind of gives you everything in a way that is in terms of easiness. It's not easy, isn't necessarily the right word, but it's supposed to be kind of the simpler skills versus the more advanced skills. So, and then the things that develop at say 0 years, and then the things that develop at 10 years, and obviously it helps you see that you should work on the early skills before the late skills, and so on. So those are the types of things that we as clinicians think about. As well.
Yeah, crawling before you walk kind of thing. Which isn't necessarily the case for everybody.
No.
But it's there so that you can choose, here's the crawl, here's the walk. Literally, there are those lessons in there as well. The motor skills, as I think
And what we find with children with autism is quite often they do need to learn some kind of interim skills or stepping stones, which maybe typical kids don't. But our kids do. They need a little bit of extra learning along the way, or extra
more
teaching.
opportunities. Yeah, absolutely. This is all fascinating. I think we run the risk of getting overwhelmed because it sounds like it's so much to do.
It is.
But I want to remind everybody that this is not something that you try to do on your own. That you need some help. You need some support. There's, and we talk endlessly about working with a BCBA in whatever way you can.
And it's baby steps, and I feel like what I'm really trying to say here is that there's hope, and that no matter what your BCBA or me as a BCBA is trying to do is to find where we can start teaching. And it's not like your kid can't do this. Oh well, it's like okay, we're gonna get here, so we have to just try out all these different things. Look at your specific child. What can they do? What can we harness to move forward? What can we teach this child to move forward? And that's really what I'm trying to emphasize. So it seems really overwhelming, but that's because there's hope there for any child because
Yeah.
there's so much to work with, if that makes sense.
Yes, and that's with many things, but functional communication skills is at the core, at the core of everything. So, all right, it's a conversation that we'll continue to have because there's so much to talk about, and hopefully you guys will, we have a question. What are the preferred TV shows for children on the spectrum that gives appropriate language that is more mature than shows like Mickey Mouse or Caillou? My son is 10 and is mainstream with a full-time aide in public school going into 3rd grade. Thanks for all that you're doing. So much support to me daily. Thank you so much for writing that in. And because I have a child who's 9, I can
So
make
you must be the expert.
Yeah. I'm not an expert in this at all, but there are a couple of things that I can recommend. And there's a wide variety of different stuff depending on what your child's interested in. But for instance, there is a new electric company that is on that we find really fun that I think addresses language skills that are for kids who are older. It's not like the old electric company, dating myself here, but there was the old electric company and they would sit there and they'd go air and then they put it together and make chair. Well, this new electric company, it's a group of kids, it's a troop of kids, and they have powers that they can do with words and scramble words and put words together, and there's always a scenario, and they're like superheroes. So that's kind of fun. I'm trying to think of some of the other. If it depends on what your child's skill level is, because there's the Super Y that's older than Mickey Mouse, but I think it's not age appropriate necessarily for a 10-year-old where Electric Company is, but if you need to go back and pull up some skills, it's a really great show to kind of catch up to speed. One of the other shows that we really loved that I can't get anymore is Between the Lions. Again, that's somewhere in between the Mickey Mouse and maybe might be a little boring for a 10-year-old depending on what they're into, but a very exciting show that had a lot of different language things and also reading skills in there. And I'll talk to my son and my husband and I'll come up with a list of more, but we really like the new electric company. And not only that, we try to pair a lot of things. My son's into science, so we try to do a lot of science programs. We currently, on Netflix, you can just search topics of things, and once you find a video that you like,
then it
spits
really
out and
clever.
says to you, you might like this as well.
So, and you can do like search similar titles or something like that, similar types of things. It's really
but I can definitely recommend the Electric Company, and I'll search the family memory banks to see what else that there is that your child might enjoy. But thanks for tuning in, and we'll keep you posted on that. We have to say goodbye to you because it's time for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, but thank you so much, always. I appreciate it. I know they do too. The time and the energy and the effort and the empathy with which you address these issues is just really phenomenal and exceptional and means so much to me and to us. So thank you for being here. And we'll look forward to having her back next Wednesday. We're going to take a short break and bring Nancy Alspaugh Jackson in here because it's time for Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Stick with us.
Hi, I'm Monique Erickson. I'm a senior supervisor here at CARD in the training department.
How can we make a non-preferred outing, someplace that the child doesn't want to go, be less stressful and not be a battle?
Well, when you're looking at planning some of these outings to places that are a little more difficult for our kids, there's a lot of things you need to think about going in, and I think one of the first things you need to do is have a realistic expectation. It's going to be difficult, and it's not going to be something that you might be able to do right off the bat. You know, there's some work that goes into that and a lot of steps that go into that. You're going to want to look back and look at the behaviors. What's happening in this outing? Why is it so difficult? Where does it break down? Do we not even get through the front door? Is that the problem? Or do we get through the front door and then my child has an agenda that doesn't match mine? And then that's what we need to work on. I've had lots of families where we've worked on this. This is definitely an area that we work on in our programs. And for example, I had one little boy where we couldn't even get through the front door. So that's what we practiced. And you had to have the expectation that you knew you weren't going to the store to shop this time. We were going to go and we were going to practice this thing. This behavior of entering for whatever reason was difficult for him. That's what we were going to practice and reinforce and take baby steps to this this in behavior called grocery shopping that had all these little baby steps along the way. And just remember that it is difficult, that you have to step back and do all these steps to get there, but you will get there, and you're not going to get there if you don't practice it and do it. So you have to get out there and do it, as much as it may be difficult to be in the community and having these kind of meltdowns and these difficult behaviors with people around. You have to practice these skills to get them better. So it's important to do that. So for this little guy, we did just that. We took it from step one, he couldn't get through the door. We practiced that until that got better, and then we took on the next step. And eventually, he was able to participate in their grocery shopping. Not to say that it was an hour and it was perfect. It was more realistic. They had a few things on their list. He was able to go through, help get these things, and then they went on their way. So, but that took a lot of work and a lot of steps getting up to that point.
So what are some strategies for going to a big shopping center like a Walmart?
Some strategies just in general to keep in mind is, do you need some visual supports? Do you need some kind of visual thing, like first we're going to do this and then we're going to do this? Sometimes that's really helpful for our kids, just to know what to expect. Okay, this isn't going to last forever. We're just going to do a few things and then we get to leave this place and do something else. And that sometimes will help just alleviate that frustration that they don't really know what to expect. How long is this going to be? And so sometimes that visual support could help. You want to practice this realistically. You don't go from never having these outings to an hour. So you're building up systematically to these longer outings, so that eventually you get to a point of some duration that you can actually do something functional in that. You can actually get some items in the store and when you go there, versus just practicing a couple minutes here and there. So I think those are some things you want to think about early on. If you're going to that bigger store, I think for our kids, helpful to, depending on where their skill level is, and if you're practicing these skills, hopefully you can kind of give them, like, this is what's going to happen. This is what the rules are, kind of thing. This is what if you can do X, Y, and Z when you're in there, this is what will happen, kind of thing. Kind of be very concrete and give them an idea. Okay, we're going to go in and we're going to do this, and if you do this, this will happen. This is the behavioral contingency in place. If you don't, then we're going to need to leave, and then this will happen, kind of thing. But be very clear so that it's kind of like the rules are on the table. It's fair game. Like, we're going in, this is what's going to happen, and this is how it will be. When you're looking at stores like Walmart, very loud, lots of good stuff going on, I think just prepare yourself and be realistic about that. Is it going to be overstimulating? Can your child handle that? Do you need to take baby steps going into those bigger environments? Maybe know exactly what you need from that store. If you really need to do a lot of browsing and just taking your time, maybe is there a time that you will have an opportunity to not have to bring them with you for that, and only bring them when you have a specific agenda, like, I'm going in for these items, we're going to get them, and we're going to leave. So those are some things I would keep in mind when you're doing that.
What kinds of reinforcement should we give for doing a good job on an outing?
When you're doing these outings, something that is really important, it's important no matter what we're teaching, but definitely when you're out in the community and you're doing these type of outings that they're not preferred from our kids, you want to make sure you're always reinforcing those behaviors we want to see more of as the cornerstone to what we do. You reinforce the behaviors you want to see more of so they keep happening, and that's got to happen when you're in those community settings. So when the child is attending and he is sitting there quietly or helping you, gather things in the store if that's what you're working on, you make sure you're appraising and reinforcing them so that they know that this is a behavior we want to see more of. That may be, for some of our earlier learners, that may not just be verbal praise. It may have to be a tangible to get them through that situation. So it could be a little snack here and there to reinforce them and keep them on track. Like, oh, you're doing a great job. That's so good. I like the way you're sitting so quietly and waiting for mommy. Here's a little snack or something like that. So you might need something like that for those little ones that are early on in that experience. Or maybe you can just get to verbal praise at some point. Just depends on the learner, but you definitely want to keep them reinforced during that whole experience.
Welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Shannon Penrod.
And I'm Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson.
And I'm so thrilled to be here with you today.
I'm thrilled too. Something's falling.
Things.
You're dropping
I'm
things.
throwing things around here.
Okay.
It's how I know I'm at home.
Right.
But thrilled to be here with you today. I'm really excited about our guest that's going to be joining us in a little while.
We have a great artist and animator named
Yes.
Dani Bowman, who is on the autism spectrum
So
and has a lot of achievements. So we're going to talk to her a little bit later.
Very exciting. But there's a lot of stuff to cover in the news this week. And I
Yes.
know in particular that there was something that you were very interested in and excited about.
Yeah, I had seen on the Disability Scoop that the Autism Society wants to bring together all of the major autism organizations to establish a series of joint goals, to have a summit. Now, I've been saying this for a couple of years that I want to do a summit. I've talked to Talk About Curing Autism, Lisa Ackerman. I've talked to Holly Robinson-Peete about it. And I think it's long overdue. I think the way that sort of the Clinton Global Initiative tackles world global problems like global warming and AIDS. I think that if we had all of the major autism groups come together, and I would certainly love to see ACT Today as the executive director of that be part of it.
Absolutely.
Because I feel like ACT Today is unique in that we provide direct treatment to families. So we're really working with the families. We're not on the research side, and we do awareness, but we don't spend our money on awareness. We, you know, if I go in to do interviews on media, or Dr. Graham Boucher does, we talk about the need for early intervention, but we don't focus on that. What we focus on is direct treatment for families, ABA therapy, tuition advocacy, assisted technology. So I feel like I'm very much in touch because of the fact of our grant system and what the needs are.
Absolutely.
So I saw on Disability Scoop that the Autism Society had called for this, and Scott Badesh, who's president of the Autism Society, and I thought you and I might set up an interview for him to come on.
Absolutely.
And he said the infighting that a lot of times characterizes the autism community needs to stop. Until we come together, we're not going to be able to move the needle on enhancing autism services.
Love it.
I agree completely. So I wrote on the blog that we would love to be a part of this. I said, as one of the few organizations that offers treatment services and support, ACT Today wants to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. We would love to participate.
Wonderful.
So let's call him, get him on the show, and we can talk about it.
Absolutely. I think it's a great idea. I think it's more well past time that that kind of a summit needs to happen, and I want you sitting at that table.
I want to be there too. And apparently Autism Speaks had a spokesman that said the organization looks forward to joining this conversation about how we can all work together. Autism Speaks on the blog got a lot of, you know, we've got a lot of vocal people on this blog saying that Autism Speaks has gobbled up some of the other organizations with their media machine. But we have to remember, I think, that because of that media machine, there's a lot more awareness. So I think rather than pointing fingers and saying, you know, you're on this side, you're on this side, didn't we all start nonprofits, and don't we all run nonprofits to help the autism community? Isn't that the goal, Shannon?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to intent. You know, what is the intent? And people have different areas that they're focusing on, because there's lots of areas to focus on. Like you were saying, you know, your organization, you have nothing against research. You love research, but that's not what your organization does.
No, and
your organization is there to help today.
Right, today, and I do believe there is not enough of an emphasis on the children out there today that need services, and particularly the older kids that are aging upwards into the job force. I'm very excited to talk to Dani Bowman, our guest today, because she is a young person with real skills and talents, and she is an example of how our kids can make a living, how they can be contributing members of the society.
Which is a wonderful, wonderful.
So that was particularly of interest. So Scott, we're going to be calling you. We're going to be asking you on the show, and I want to know when this is happening. I'm there.
And like I said, I want you to be there. I want your voice to be heard there as a parent.
And I'd like you to come too. So let's all get all of us together.
I'm not saying I won't, but I always say I like having you on my team, and you're a great spokesperson. So I'm thrilled if you're there.
Okay, I'll be there.
Okay, a couple of other things that came out in the news this week. One in particular that I wanted to talk, well, two in particular that I want to talk about. There's a new study that came out that's titled "Flame Retardant Linked to Autism Genetically Susceptible Animals."
Right.
Now, I always like to put things through the filter of saying, okay, this is research, and nobody needs to go off a deep end here, but the kinds of things that they were looking for the first time, scientists have reported that the environment and genetics can work together to create autism-like symptoms in mice exposed in the womb to a flame retardant.
Okay.
And so that's really what we're talking about. Their new study, Human Molecular Genetics, they took female mice that were, and this is one of the other interesting things about this, that they only did this with female mice. They didn't do it with male mice.
Okay.
They exposed, the mothers were more susceptible to, more genetically susceptible to having a child that was having autism-like symptoms.
Okay.
Get my thoughts here together. They had other mice that were socially impaired, so they then exposed those mother mice to some flame retardant and saw that there was a correlation with those children, those mice children, the female mice children, exhibiting those behaviors.
And last week we talked about the fact that at, I believe, Caltech, they had exposed mice, pregnant female mice, to, they had caused immune dysregulation.
Right.
They had exposed them to viruses and certain immune issues that compromise the immune system. And similarly, the young mice displayed autism-like symptoms.
Right.
And then they went ahead and did some bone marrow transplants, which I can't imagine doing in a mouse, but you know, it's amazing what medicine can do. And when they did the bone marrow transplants with some healthy cells, the mice no longer displayed the symptoms.
Right.
So very similar in that, you know, the research is being done on mice, that whatever they're doing to the pregnant female mice is showing in the offspring autism-like symptoms. So this would go with what a lot of leading experts are saying, which is that this is what we're seeing today with this epidemic is not true autism as was diagnosed 30 years ago, where a child never developed properly, where they never had speech or language, but where there is normal development and then suddenly regression around the age between a year and a half, a year, and 3 years of age. So that possibly these genetic factors are interacting with the environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, more research needs to be done. And we did talk about the bone marrow with the mice last week, and we were saying, you know, we are not at the point where anybody should be going out and asking for a bone marrow transplant for their children, nor are we at the point where we're saying you need to be hypervigilant about flame retardants. We're not at that point yet, although I will say this, that, you know, if a bone marrow, I mean, we're talking about a huge, huge deal that is costly and potentially dangerous. So nobody's going to run out and do that. But if you're at the mall today and you're going to pick out a pair of pajamas and you have the choice between the very tight-fitting ones that are not flame retardant and the ones that are loose fitting that have flame retardant, you might want to make a choice.
Yeah, just as because the evidence is showing that toxins we do think play a role. I mean, I would say we could say with certainty that toxins in the environment play a role in autism, that you might want to go green in your cleaning products. You might not want to put in carpeting when your baby, you know, when you have a newborn. You might not want to have lead around. You know, these are common sense things,
These are choices that you know, you're going to make at some point anyway, and you can make a choice. That doesn't mean you have to go off a deep end.
No.
But the truth of the matter is that, you know, when they make loose-fitting pajamas now, they dip them in a flame retardant, and there's a reason why, because children got burned in house fires.
Yes.
I'm just saying, you know, I want my child to be safe, but I can put him in a tight-fitting pajama, and that is the choice that we make in our house. You know, but that's our choice.
That's your choice.
So, yeah, that is my choice.
So once again, we're not recommending any of these things, but these are in the Schaefer Autism Reports, our friends, and we encourage you to subscribe to that, get the latest news, because to be informed, I think, is great.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other interesting thing that I find this fascinating, the big headlines all this week is the tooth fairy have the key to autism.
Yeah.
This is what everybody was talking about. And so if you don't know about this, the University of Texas Health Science Center is currently conducting a study in which they're examining baby teeth with the intention to gain more understanding about autism. Now, why baby teeth? Because they're taking these precious baby teeth that we all love and adore, and they're grinding them down to a fine powder and putting them through a series of tests to see what the environmental toxin load is on the teeth. Because previous to this, we've been doing testing on hair and blood, but that gives us like a snapshot in time of what's happening right now with a child with their current toxic load.
Okay.
But the baby teeth, when they're able to look at them and grind them down and really examine them, show a much longer period of time and exposure to potential toxins.
Now, are they calling for all people with autistic children that have baby teeth to send them in? How do you
that's
participate?
a really good question, because I was saying to Nancy before we started, I said, you know, I would hate to give up my son's baby teeth, which I'm not supposed to have because, you know, somebody came and took them, right? Wink, wink. And but I do have a stash of baby teeth that I would hate to give up, but in the name of science, to get information, I might be willing to do that. So we'll find out about that. But I want to state that the goal of the study is to find out whether genetics combined with environmental factors can trigger autism. So same neighborhood, but just taking baby teeth.
Okay. I'm willing to give up some of Wyatt's teeth.
So we'll find out.
I'll get him back from the tooth fairy. I'll call the I'll call him up.
Call the tooth fairy. All right. So in any case, we'll find out if they're taking donations. Okay. But $100,000 was given to the study by the Autism Speaks organization. So I think a notable thing.
A notable thing and a great thing that they are doing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So interesting things in the news and lots to unfold. We'll see as time goes by. But we should take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to have the phenomenal, and I'm so excited about this, Dani Bowman.
I know. I think this is going to be great.
She's an incredible young woman, and she is going to join us when we come back, so stay tuned. Okay.
This is part 1 of Daniel Bowman's Inclusion Film Camp Adventure. We're flying down to Jacksonville, Florida.
Hello? Is there anybody there? Excuse me. We are not recording yet. Just please get out of that dark room right away. We're going to record in just a second. Whoops. I didn't mean to do that. Hi, I'm Dani Bowman. I'm 16 years old and I'm autistic. I am fortunate to have the opportunity to teach animation to other teens with autism at Joey Travolta's Inclusion Film Camps this summer. I am excited to meet those of you that will be attending inclusion camps around the country. I am looking forward to meeting everybody, and for those of you who can't make the camp, I'm publishing a video blog so that everyone can enjoy the camp this summer. The most exciting part of the camp is I'm going to teach students about animation. It's Gemstar! Hooray! I'm going to be an Ichiban for being animated at camp! Excuse me, Gemstar. You're filling the entire screen with your face. You're driving the audience crazy. Don't be silly. I'm way too cool into the camp. I wanted to be animated at camp. I know, but that's enough already. Now you are wasting everyone's time. Now please go away or else. Or else what? I won't ever draw you again if you continue to make all that fuss. So please move away from the camera. Oh well, I have to go, so see you later. Well, sorry about that, because Gemstar got so excited that he wants to be animated at camp, but it's awfully rude of him to interrupt my video recording. Alright then, back to the business. For those of you who live in Jacksonville, Florida, our first stop, I can't wait to see you folks. I know Joey Travolta has some really great things planned. Here's a little clip of the camp from last year. Enjoy!
Say we have a master and then a close-up.
This year is gonna be awesome, okay? Awesome, awesome, awesome.
It's good to be back. Going to the mall this afternoon? Yeah, what are you gonna be doing?
Just be yourself.
Just be yourself.
Just being yourself. Where'd that come from?
You're fired.
Everything was gone, it would just be an empty wall. So it's gonna make I don't want it to be a 10-person team. Yes.
Has this thing on it, you moving around. But with this, I can kind of walk around and do roll shots.
Well, we're here now. We're back. And we have a very special guest with us today. Yes. And I want you to know that Danielle Bowman, who is our guest, I had an intro that I wrote, and I sent it to her, and she added to it. She beefed it up, because you have a lot of accomplishments, Dani. Dani is a 17-year-old animator with her own animation company that she started when she was 11 years old, who is on the autism spectrum. And Dani teaches animation at Joey Travolta's Inclusion Film Camps, which we know all about Joey's camps. She's illustrated 2 books, Dani and Goliath and Richie and Goliath, which our sons happen to love. And she's working on other books at the moment. She premiered 2 animated shorts, Mr. Raindrop and the Namazu at San Diego Comic-Con. And now she's also traveling to Ohio this week to teach animation at Ohio Center for Autism and Low Incidence Ocali at Columbus, Ohio. Wow, what a resume. Welcome, Dani.
Why, thank you so much for sending me into the channel. I'm so excited.
Well, we're excited to have you here.
It's thrilling to have you here.
Now, we first met you through Inclusion Films that Joey Travolta runs, and you have been working there for some time, right?
Why, thanks.
Yeah. So tell us how you got started in doing animation.
Okay, then. I started my own animation company when I was about 6 years old, and by using MS Paint, Adobe Photoshop, and PowerPoint presentations. This is all that. Excuse me, I need to rephrase it.
That's okay, dear.
Take your time.
This is all that was available to me at that time.
Okay.
I also used to do stop motion with a home camera. And when I moved to my aunt and uncle's house when I was 11 years old, they are pretty amazed of what I could do with those programs.
I bet.
And so they started me on Toon Boom Animation, and I've been upgrading ever since. I told my aunt and uncle when I was 11 that I wanted to start my own animation company, and with their help of my company was officially launched at age 14.
Yeah, what an amazing array of accomplishments. So now you're 17 years old, and we were talking about Dani the other day and how incredible you are, but we were trying to voice it's a specific kind of animation that you do, right? What kind of animation is it that you do?
Well, I mainly do digital animation with the animation package I use is called Toon Boom Studio 7. I could also work on different animations such as traditional animation, stop motion, and CG animation like the ones on Autodesk Maya.
Pretty incredible. It's all over my head.
This is like another language to us, Dani. Shannon and I aren't up to speed on all this, but you're clearly just so well educated in this area, and you've got so many talents in this area. Now, you illustrated with animation 2 books. Danny and Goliath was the first one, correct? And Danny and Goliath is about a little boy named Danny who is being bullied, and he meets a great little bull, a young bull named Goliath, who helps him. And then Richie and Goliath is about a sea turtle who also meets up with Goliath, and he was being bullied. And how can you tell us about these books and the theme and how this kind of came about?
Yeah, indeed. So it came up like this. Joey and his friend Richard Welch always wanted to produce the book series together. And when Joey and I met, he got the idea to go with the books and allowed me to illustrate them. Joey and I were always like to be involved in the anti-bullying campaigns. And thank you for just talking about the books. I think you just got a little mixed up on the first book. Like Goliath was bullied when he was in the first book. Goliath was, as a calf, was bullied by the other bulls, and he met a boy named Danny who also felt the same way, and together became friends, and together face to face against the bullies and deal with them.
That's correct.
Yep.
I did forget that aspect, that the bull, little Goliath, was also bullied, and as I recall, instead of going like a big bull sound like moo, he went meow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, indeed. I heard about that.
And then when Goliath met Danny, and he started to defend Danny against the boy bully at school, all of a sudden he let out a big boo, and scared that bully away.
Yeah, indeed.
And taught him that it's really not cool to bully, right?
That's cool.
Yeah. Now, do you think a lot of young people on the autism spectrum get bullied?
I think so, especially with me on schools, including high school, like locking you out of Flint Ridge, locking you out of high school.
Yeah. Did you get bullied some?
Sometimes I do, but verbally, the boys just verbally bully me, but not physically bully me.
Okay. And how did that make you feel?
I felt like very upset, and it felt like I just want revenge against them.
It's really hard to experience.
But then you're such a talented, beautiful young woman. I bet you had a lot of friends too that really cared for you and really thought that wasn't cool for you to be bullied. And I bet you do have a lot of friends and family that are very proud of you.
Thanks.
Yeah. I certainly, you know what, if you were my daughter, I would be so proud of you.
I would too. I'm sure anybody would be proud of you.
No
You're
problem.
An awesome job. And then did you decide to do the second book just because the first one was so well received, or you had such a good time?
I think Joey Travolta just wanted me to work on this book. It's just his idea.
Okay.
But you liked the idea. Yeah.
Indeed.
Is it fun for you to illustrate books, children's books?
Of course, and it's kind of a little bit more on the, let me see, what do you call that? A little boring at first, but now then it just gets a lot more fun.
Yeah. And you got fans, too. When we saw you at the Autism Walk, that was the first time that I got to meet you. You were at a booth and you were drawing, and there were kids who were coming up who had read your books. Is it fun for you to meet kids who've read your books?
Of course. It's a lot fun, especially signing the books for them.
Yeah, I would bet that is.
Yeah, I mean, you're really a celebrity now.
I thank you.
Yeah, so you're out there signing books and meeting people that have read them, and, you're a noted illustrator now. I mean, you're getting famous, Dani.
Why, thank you.
Well, I think what we're going to do is we're going to take a little break because we want to come back and find out about some of the other projects that you might be doing and the fact that you're teaching.
Yes.
And in the new intro you gave me, I see you've worked on a lot of, you've premiered 2 animated shorts.
I want to hear about Comic-Con, what Comic-Con was like, but we're going to take a break first.
Yeah, we're going to take a break, and we'll talk in between the break, and when we come back, we're going to ask you some more questions.
Oh, why, thank you so much. I just can't wait to answer more.
Okay, Dani, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and this is my son Jem. We're here today at the Home Depot. You might know that Home Depot is famous for giving free classes to adults on lots of things like tiling and other home crafts. Well, they also have free classes for kids as well. It's called the Kids Workshop. We love doing that, don't we, Jem?
Yeah.
It's cool. So come on inside with us and let's do a craft.
Yay.
The Kids Workshop is a program that's been around with Home Depot almost since we've been a company, and it's been developed to allow kids in the community to come in and give them an opportunity to build something, to be able to create something and be able to take just simple wood pieces and put them together with nails and hammers and screwdrivers and then paint them.
So you do this every first Saturday of the month.
Any Home Depot that you go to on the first Saturday of every month between 9 and 12, you can join different associates throughout different stores and build these projects with these kids.
And do they have to do anything beforehand, or can they just show up on that Saturday?
All they need to do is show up. We have all the tools, all the materials that the kids will need. We have aprons that we give to the kids that they can take home and maintain their pins. They get pins on a regular basis for completing projects. With that, they can keep track of how many projects they've done. And
it's all free.
It's all absolutely free, all
Which is
provided.
wonderful. And Wilson, I have to say, you know, you guys devised this for all kids to be able to do this.
Correct.
What I particularly love about it as an autism mom, it gives my child a place to come and learn a new skill, to socialize with kids of all kinds.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here for. Home Depot is definitely loves to be involved with the community and bring the community in to work with us. That's what we love to do.
Welcome back.
We are here with Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, and our special guest, Dani Bowman, who is a 17-year-old animator. And Dani has her own animation company. She started when she was 11 years old. Dani is on the autism spectrum. She teaches animation at Joey Travolta's Inclusion Films. And we were just talking about her two books, Dani and Goliath and Richie and Goliath, that she illustrated. And people can get these books on Amazon, Dani, Amazon?
That's right, and also on my website at parlay-studios.com and their website called Pick a Lot of Kids.
Okay. PowerlightStudios.com and Pick a Lot of Kids.
Yeah.
Okay.
But also on Amazon.
Okay, and you're also working on a new book. What's that called?
I think the new book is called Rajalika by Elizabeth McCaw, and I just finished doing the illustrations, but it's not officially published yet.
Okay.
But it will be sooner or later.
Okay. And is there a Christmas Carol story that you're working on?
Yes, it's my original story, and I just got it finished as a rough draft, and I just printed out for people during the holiday time.
Okay.
Very fun. I'd
All
like
right,
to see that.
that's going to be
That's awesome.
great.
And it's special for Parlay Animation Studios fans.
Okay, very cool. Now I want to know, because I think the Inclusion Films camp, you just did a camp
for military children down in San Diego.
Yes, and you're a teacher. What is that like, teaching for Inclusion Films?
What is it like teaching Inclusion Films? It makes me feel like I'm the teacher here, and I'm so.
Do you like it?
Yeah, of course. I'm so glad to be the teacher. Very proud of myself.
What do you like about it? What's really fun about it for you teaching?
Okay, what I really like about teaching animation to people on the spectrum is being able to teach other kids or young adults on the spectrum and watch them when they realize that they could do it.
Oh yeah, I can see where that would be really cool.
Yeah, do you find when you're teaching, Dani, that a lot of kids really don't know they have talent and then they learn they do?
That's right. They just really liked it.
Good. Did you have any important teachers in your life?
In my life, I do have important teachers, especially from La Cañada High School, and also from outside of school, including Art Center College of Design, Armory, at Old Pasadena and Woodbury University.
Okay.
And Summer Creative Workshop at Loyola Marymount University, and right now I'm going to attend at CalArts.
Oh, CalArts. So there are, I think you're hearing there are a lot of resources. If you have a child on the spectrum that has talent, like Dani does, and my son is very artistic, and I would love for him to follow in the footsteps that you have taken. So I think there's a lot of resources for parents and for kids to explore, because you've found places that welcome you with open arms and that have really helped you learn this craft, haven't you, Dani?
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
You know who we had on about a week ago? We had Deborah Husseini from the Art of Autism, and she was talking about you too, because that's another organization that you do things with as well, the Art of Autism, right?
Yeah, and I have known her, and I also known Carrie Bowers.
Yes, Carrie, whose son did the film Normal People Scare Me.
Right.
So wonderful, wonderful group of people and great work that they do. But I'm interested, Dani, you know, people don't know enough about autism. You have high functioning autism. What would you like for everybody to know about what it's like to have autism?
I think it is true. Having autism can be a big challenge for everyone if they're diagnosed with autism, especially the obstacles you have to face, such as learning social skills, dealing fears of the sounds, or snapping out of daydreaming. But the bright side is you will find a higher chance to find your talent. And also, don't forget that we are all different.
Absolutely.
And there's one thing. When you meet one person who has autism, you met one person on the spectrum. We are so different, and we also have different challenges.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just like all of us as human beings, Dani, are so different.
Yeah.
And all human beings have different challenges. And I hope that people that are watching today are realizing just what a remarkable young lady you are and the talent you have. And it would be such a shame if that talent was hidden from the world. And I think by you being here today, I have a feeling that a lot of people are going to watch you, and they're going to get inspired by you. You know what I mean? They're going to say, if she can do it, I can do it.
Wow, and I'm just so excited.
Yeah, and maybe some, you know, there might be some parents out there that are watching today that have, say, a child younger than you. You know, I'm even thinking about my son Wyatt. He's 10, and his talent is so great. I would love for him to be just like you at your age.
I thank you.
Yeah.
I'm interested. You mentioned daydreaming as something that happens sometimes. Do you feel like you daydream a lot, and is that where some of your ideas come from?
I daydream a lot to get a lot of ideas, but the drawback is my Aunt Sandy and Uncle Patrick wants me to get out of daydreaming because it feels like it makes me lack of social skills and make people think I'm strange or weird. But like I said, nobody's perfect.
Right. Nobody is perfect.
But do you get some of your ideas from when you daydream?
Yeah, I do get some ideas.
Okay.
And
for your books and for your animation. Yeah, I'm sure that daydreams are important for all of us. I know it's hard to control sometimes, but we all like to daydream, you know, and get, that's where a lot of our creativity comes from. And you're a very creative person.
Well, thank you so much.
Okay, so we talked about what you would like people to hear about having autism. Is there any way that if you're talking to people now that are listening that are typical as opposed, you know, neurotypical, they're not on the autism spectrum, is there ways that those of us that aren't on the autism spectrum can be more understanding, more helpful? How could we do that?
I think helping us and understanding our lack of social skills would be a great, like for example, you see, if my schoolmates would see me by myself, maybe they could come and talk with me. We don't mean to be rude and or strange, we just don't know how to be social. But most of us really want to fit in just like everyone. And it would be pretty good if we could learn some small talk because we don't understand small talk.
And and friends can help you to learn that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, do you have friends, a lot of friends in your world today, in your life today?
Yeah, mostly outside of high school.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't really have much neurotypical friends in La Cañada High School, but I do have a lot of classmates.
Right. And so mostly outside of high school, in the world, in your art world, and people you meet.
That's right.
Okay. All right.
Is it a large school that you go to, Dani?
Yes, La Cañada High School is pretty big.
Okay.
And are you going to be a senior this year? What grade are you in?
I just finished 11th grade, which is my junior year, and now I'm just moving on to senior.
Okay. And what do you want to do when you graduate from high school?
When I graduate from high school, I'm trying to go find the best university, and then I just have to keep doing more and more and more school over the years till I get every last of schools finished, and including graduate school, which means I will be a graduate school student, and then move on with my own animation company.
And what type of animation do you want to do? If you were to say, if you could have any dream you wanted of anybody you could be or any type of person you could be, okay, there's no limit, okay, to this dream right now. Who would you like to be and what would you like to be? I'm not going to put words in your mouth. You tell me what you would like to accomplish in your life.
What I really like to accomplish in my life is, well, your question also means what your future plans is.
That's right. That's exactly it. So what are your future plans?
My animation company, Parlay Animation Studios, will become huge, like Walt Disney's animation studio or like Nickelodeon's animation studio. It's going to be pretty big. And however, I plan to include mostly people on the spectrum because I know how amazing we can do. My life's goal is to change the world's perception of autism and show the potential that autistic individuals like me have. Hopefully, we could produce some great animated features together.
I'm really looking forward to seeing that.
I mean, I have a feeling that you just might be the next big studio out there.
I think so.
And some of these, and animation is so popular today, obviously. I think there's a great market for it. You're a great talent. You know how to teach. And if anybody's out there listening that maybe, might want to fund Dani someday or take her in under their arm and
produce a film?
Let's produce a movie. Yeah. What are your favorite animated movies?
My favorite animated movies I really like, I just like some Pixar films. I like Pokemon movies. I like some animated films from UK like Romeo and Juliet.
I love that.
You love that film.
That was a good film.
I do. My son Wyatt loves that film too.
And I also like one type of film called Rango, which won for Best Animated Feature.
That was a great, great animated movie.
Now, what is Spark Action, Dani?
Spark Action is a contest that allows people to do the speech to help out their animation, to help out their company in general.
Okay.
And I just won the California Youth Innovation Award.
Wow. That's pretty exciting.
Which this award helps me to hire people on the spectrum.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. Well, congratulations for winning that. I have one more question for you. I love the title of your company, Power Light. Did you come up with that?
Of course I did.
And why? What about Power and Light? Why did you want to make that the name of your company?
Power Light, I just got it in my head, and there was a commercial inside, a flashlight commercial, while I was, it's very personal.
Oh, okay. We don't want to, tread on that if it's personal. That's a good thing to say.
It's the personal thing I just learned about Parlay Animation Studios name. It just comes from my game system name, my game system username.
Oh, okay.
When I used to have a Nintendo DS with me, and I just used to call myself Volt Girl, and I changed my name to Powerlight. I named it after my Nintendo DS username.
Okay.
Okay, that
Very
makes
cool.
sense. That makes sense.
Very cool.
Now, are you teaching any more this summer? Yeah,
Teaching more. I'm just teaching more.
Yeah.
Like you talked about, and I am talking about right now, is called the animation. It's a film camp in Ohio, Columbus, Ohio.
Okay, when will that be?
This next weekend. Next week.
Weekend, okay.
I said week, next week.
Okay. Next week, okay.
Very cool.
So you'll be working with Joey Travolta and Inclusion Films, and you're going to be in Ohio teaching animation. And I'm sure if they go to the Inclusion Films website. Yeah.
But this time, the animation camp is only going to be just about Parlay Animation Studios. It's going to be the first time ever. Parlay Animation Film Camp.
So your own film camp instead of Inclusion Films.
Own
That's
film
pretty
camp.
exciting.
That is very exciting.
And we
Very
didn't
exciting.
ask about Comic-Con. Did you have a good time at Comic-Con?
Of course it is. When I first came inside the convention, I just looked in my eyes. It's really huge.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I've heard. I've never been. Was that your first time going?
It's my first time going to the convention.
Wow.
Yeah. Did you see any great characters that you'd always, heard about?
I see a lot of cosplays, and there's lots of good stuff. Like there's Hasbro section, Nintendo section. There are all kinds of costumes and some comic book booths.
Yeah.
Very cool.
That must have been really fun for you, I can imagine.
Very exciting. Dani, thank you so much for being with us. You've been so wonderful, and I'm so inspired by your story and the work that you do, and I know that it's inspiring to a lot of people out there watching.
Yeah, we're going to keep a watch on you, Dani. We're going to be following your career, staying in touch with you, and
cheering you on.
Cheering you on, because you're such a talent. You're such a delightful young woman, and we wish you nothing but the best of success. And we know your goal of inspiring people on the spectrum and showing the world what they're capable of. You're going to achieve that, I have no doubt.
With my pleasure. You're welcome.
Okay, sweetie.
All right, we're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back with some information about what you're doing this weekend.
This weekend.
Pretty exciting.
Okay.
Nancy's got her own stuff going on. Stick with us.
Today has partnered with Cox Communications to bring Inclusion Films to San Diego. Led by Joey Travolta, Inclusion Films teaches filmmaking to developmentally disabled children.
It's a practical film camp where we take them through the process of making a film. And each group, we split them into 3 groups, and they're each responsible for making a short film together as a group. How many people like animation in this group?
This is a wonderful opportunity for children to build their self-confidence, to develop new friendships, and it's also an opportunity for their siblings to come and to enjoy the company of other peers in this really wonderful, fun setting.
Okay, so you know what time it is?
Cox Communications has years of supporting the community. We believe in giving back to the communities we serve, and military, youth, and education are our 3 pillars. And so this really matched up with everything that we're about and what we're trying to do to give back to the San Diego community. And so we were thrilled to meet up with ACT Today and Inclusion Films and to have this wonderful synergy. 3 organizations really trying to move towards a common cause.
All right, we ready?
There you go, got it. Mark it.
Okay, you'll be talking to me, okay? So tell me your name, say my name is. In the past, we've done The Junior Apprentice, which was a takeoff on The Apprentice, the Really Late Show, which is a takeoff on The Tonight Show. And this year, we're doing a combination of 60 Minutes and Entertainment Tonight called 30 Minutes Tonight.
Okay, good. So now you understand what an improv is. You guys get the idea what an improv is? To go with the flow of something, especially in the action.
My son Elijah, he's into movies and he's into music, and so this program might bring out his particular skills.
Amazing. You're like a professional animator.
Every single person here we've met has been so kind, loving, and caring. They've given Nicholas the opportunity to be himself and be around people who have the same passion and interest as he does.
What is it you learned at Copenhagen? What did you learn?
That sewing is kind of tricky.
It was really nice to know how much they were enjoying this camp.
and they're with people who are supporting them and are making them feel great about themselves and their differences and their similarities. And I get two kids that are working together and apart and together and apart, so it's an interrelationship as well as a camp and a learning experience.
Everything that goes into the process of making a film goes into everyday life. So they're learning life skills, they're learning to collaborate. And when they collaborate, they come up with a product that everybody can see they're a part of something. They become a community, they become a family. When you make a film, you really become a family.
Are we having fun at film camp? Yeah! We are close to Hollywood. Yep. And Hollywood is always looking for young talent like this.
Autism is an epidemic and is not going to get any better anytime soon. Families are struggling to pay the bills, to put food on their table, let alone provide services for their children. And ACT Today is a vehicle of support for these families by helping them get access to life supports that they couldn't otherwise have.
My experience in film camp has been great, and I just really love how all you guys decided to bring us together.
What I learned here, I learned to animate, how to operate the plotboard. I learned about the animation and filming and editing.
Making friends. Making new friends and acting.
Meeting new friends. You can be anything you want to be.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. We just finished talking with Dani Bowman, who was so wonderful.
Wasn't she great? I mean,
just delightful.
And this girl is so talented.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, just to think of the talent in that young woman and how she's really taken that and turned it into a vocation. And I would not doubt that she goes on to make movies.
Absolutely.
You know.
And 17, come on. I mean, you know, this is intimidating sometimes for people who have been in lots of different media situations. I think it's always exciting to see a young person at that age being willing to take that on and come in here and be in the studio and speak with us.
Yeah.
Would be difficult for any 17-year-old.
Any 17-year-old.
She did a great job.
And every now and then she had to refer to her notes, but that was okay.
Right. You know, I mean, we do. I'm about to refer to my notes right now.
I refer to mine every minute.
Yeah, there we go.
And so you know, Shannon, I'm hoping we can include more individuals on the spectrum on this show. And I think it's really important that we show our viewers, we give them hope. You know, we've had Jesse Saperstein on, who wrote Atypical. He has Asperger's. We just had Dani on, and we've got a couple of other young people and individuals we're going to be bringing on to show you what can be done.
The faces of autism. We were talking about that earlier today because, you know, as Dani said, once you know one person on the autism spectrum, well, good for you, you know one person on the autism spectrum. But you've got a pretty big, exciting event coming up this weekend.
This weekend I'm going to be...
The 7th annual Back to School Autism Asperger Conference at the Pasadena Convention in Pasadena. It actually starts on the Friday, goes to the Saturday, and you're speaking on Saturday.
I'm speaking on Saturday at a special lunchtime session. My speech is called Waiting for Wyatt, A Journey Through Autism to Empowerment. And it's basically my personal story where I relate sort of my journey and my struggles, really, because I certainly had struggles in the beginning of Wyatt's, from not being able to get a diagnosis to just complete sheer terror that I felt at the things that were happening to my son, and wanting answers, and then finally getting them, and then yet the other journey to getting treatment and care, which is a whole other thing. And you know, you really wonder when you're going through that stage of this journey, you know, when our children are very young, sometimes you really say, can I survive this? Am I going to be able to get through this?
Absolutely.
And what I hope to do is give parents faith and hope and strength to face that journey, because I do believe, you know, the term special needs child, well, the parents that parent special needs child are special parents.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I believe we're chosen. And I want to empower them for the journey ahead. give them a little pat on the back and a little boost psychologically to face what's coming in the future.
Yeah.
And so that's what my talk's about.
And you're a very empowering speaker. I mean, I was talking about you behind your back to somebody the other day and saying what a remarkable person you are. And, you know, you meet all kinds of people on this journey, all different kinds of parents, but I think that your story is both rooted in a lot of similarity that a lot of us can relate to, and yet you have some very interesting, unique things about your journey. You're certainly not the only parent who adopted a child, but it's a very interesting aspect.
Yeah, I had many struggles in that my husband's cancer, my husband had cancer. That was a big struggle for us. It necessitated us having a child through in vitro or doing infertility treatments. Then that didn't work. I talk about all the things, including a horrific adoption scam we went through. And then finally, my dream happened. And after one blissful year of having the perfect baby, things changed.
Yeah, and it is amazing. Your journey is amazing because you were 100% clear you wanted to be a parent. And I know, and I've heard her speak, and I want you to go and hear her speak, whether it's at this event or at another event. But it's a really emotional, cathartic thing to hear you speak about how badly you wanted to be a parent. And we don't want to give things away, but the moment in which you were given the option of being Wyatt's parent.
It was a pretty remarkable day. And then I think the important lesson too is that when I look at parents in the audience that come to hear me speak, I see really a lot of pain and a lot of feelings of inadequacy. And what I want to say to every parent out there that's listening to us, that's trying to learn more about autism, that is really, because every parent of a child with autism is fighting a battle, because it's a battle to get services and to get treatment. And I want them to know they're doing a great job. You're doing a great job. You're a good mom. You're a good dad, and keep it up. And they're not told that enough. They're not given that reinforcement. You're doing okay. And just to give them that kind of confidence to face the journey ahead. So I hope you'll come hear me if you're listening. And it's in Pasadena, as we said. I'll be speaking at the lunchtime session at the 7th Annual Back to School Autism Asperger's Conference at the Pasadena Convention Center. And there's lots of other great speakers,
Absolutely, and we'll keep people posted if they're not in the California area, because you speak around the world, literally around the world. So we'll let people know when you have other upcoming events so that you can go and catch Nancy live and in person, because it's worth it. It's really worth it. And if people wanted to have you come and speak for their group, they can contact you.
They can contact us at ACT Today. They can email info@act-today.org. They can connect with me. The website, they can also go to Nancy Allspaw Jackson, all one word, and email me. And they can call us at 818-705-1625. And I'll say that again, 818-705-1625. And I'm happy to talk to, and it doesn't have to be autism. I grew up with a brother with Down syndrome. It could be facing any, as a special needs, any challenge as a woman, primarily, I think, as a parent, and I can come in and talk about a range of subjects.
You're great at empowering people, and in particular empowering women, and in all the different times in a life when a woman needs to be empowered. Nancy does wonderful work with people in terms of facing changes that come about age.
Midlife. I've written 2 books. One called Not Your Mother's Midlife, a 10-step guide on. A 10-step guide to fearless aging. And I always say there is no such thing as fearless, it's fearless. And then, Fearless Women Midlife Portraits, which was a photo essay book with a lot of kick-ass women in it that prove that over 40, in my worldview, over 40 is the best time of life. I mean, we may have the strong bones and joints and smooth skin and the pumping hormones when we're younger, but 40 and over, the wisdom is pretty cool.
Well, and thank goodness you're sitting next to me so that you can tell me these things.
I'll lead the way for you, my dear. You're a lot younger than I am.
Oh, heavens. But, you know, we're constantly making it so cold in here because I'm one hot flash away
now
from losing my mind.
you're facing the big 5-0.
The big 5-0, and we're going to do a fundraiser. I'm just sorting it out to figure out because I want to raise some money for autism care and treatment today.
Which is just great. Great way to celebrate.
50, and what's the alternative, right?
Right, there is no alternative.
50. Might as well make some money to help somebody along the way.
But you know, we're all living longer, they say. So to me now, 50 is just that you're closing the first half.
All right.
You got a whole other 50 years to go, Shannon. Think about that.
That makes me tired
Does it
right
make
now.
you tired?
That makes me tired right now.
You know what? Maybe you're gonna have a life of leisure maybe the last 30 years you could just go hang out on an island somewhere. And
I don't know. I'm one of those people that has to stay busy. I know. All right. In any case, as this show ends, Nancy and I want you to know that the conversation continues. There are lots of ways that you can get in touch with us, and we really look forward to your comments, your questions, the suggestions about what you want to see on the show.
Yeah.
If you want to be a part of the show, if you want to come in and sit with us here in the studio, if you're local, or you can Skype in with us, you can. Emily is starting to show you some of the different ways that you can interact with us.
Lots of ways. Technology is amazing today,
Lots
right?
of different places that you can watch us.
Yeah.
We hope that you will, because this is a conversation, and we look forward to your input in it. And you add something to the conversation that is absolutely essential. We really can't do this without you, and we want to serve you. Is that not correct?
That's true.
Absolutely true. So we're going to be back tomorrow, and I haven't even mentioned that on tomorrow's show, do you know who we're having is Zev and Justin from The Amazing Race. So that's going to be tomorrow is the day that they can come in. So until then, give your kids a hug for me.
And catch the joy as it flies out the window and door.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.